We present Clement Freud, Peter Jones, Ian Carmichael and Amy MacDonald in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we welcome back Ian Carmichael and Amy MacDonald to do battle with our two regular male competitors, Clement Freud and Peter Jones. I'm going to ask them to speak again, if they can, on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And we'll begin the show this week with Peter Jones and the subject, a good old English one, steak and kidney pie. Peter, would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I haven't made one for some time, but when I did, I found the great problem was to cook the meat, the kidney, well enough without actually burning the pastry.
Ian Carmichael has challenged.
You chucked an in there. Or in there.
In other words, you felt he was
I
hesitating.
heard a distinct Quite definite
Yes.
Yes, there was an
It was an And so it was a tough challenge.
I heard.
Yes, you heard.
You heard.
And Ian, you have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 47 seconds to take over the subject of steak and kidney pie, starting now.
A few months ago, I was in a restaurant in the Strand, and I saw on the menu steak, kidney, and oyster pie. I'd never had this particular dish, although I'd heard about it.
Amy MacDonald has challenged. Why?
Deviation. I mean, you just don't get oysters in the steak and kidney pie.
Oh, you do, and you can. Oh, yes.
That is the whole point of the story.
Tell us about it if you had buzz.
In fact, some absolute devotees have steak and kidney in their oyster pie.
But that's steak and kidney and oyster pie, then, isn't it?
Well, that's what I said it was, dear. I said it. You said it was
Oh, yes,
steak,
but
kidney, and oyster pie.
that's not the problem, you see. I mean, the question.
It's not the question.
I mean,
Amy, I think it's a very good challenge, but he wasn't deviating from steak and kidney pie because his particular version of it had oysters in it. So I think we must allow him to keep going, having gained a point for a wrong challenge, and there are 37 seconds left, starting now.
Unlike Amy MacDonald, I had heard of it, though I had never tasted this particular...
Amy MacDonald has challenged.
Deviation. I had heard of it, actually.
So it's my word against yours, really.
Had you tasted as well?
No, because I can't bear oysters.
Well, why did you challenge last time if you had heard of it?
Look, all I was saying last time was that we're talking about steak and kidney pie, not steak and kidney and oyster pie.
Well, all right. I believe you, Amy, that you
I
had...
feel very strongly about that, you know.
I know. You made your
seemed
point with
reasonable.
such vehemence that I give in completely. And I agree with you, because I do believe that you've heard of it but not tasted it. So, you have the subject now, Amy. 32 seconds, steak and kidney pie, starting now.
When I make my steak and kidney pie, I go down the road to the nearest butcher, I buy some steak, take it back, and there I've got rolled up...
Ian Carmichael.
Hesitation.
Yes, I think you hesitated when you got back.
Crossing the road, that's all.
She'd got back, she'd crossed the road. She hesitated in front of the house. She wasn't sure whether she'd come back to the right place.
Well, she'd forgotten the kidneys, as a matter of fact. She didn't mention getting them.
No, she didn't.
No, so
That's
she
why she-
naturally would hesitate, go back, get them, and then she'd be on her way. I think it's an unreasonable challenge, most unfair.
Next time you're a housemaid at dinner, remind me, don't have steak and kidney pie, we'll never get it. Ian, I agree with your challenge, so you have the subject of steak and kidney pie, and there are 20 seconds left, starting now.
So I said to this waiter, who I think was Italian, actually, may I have some of your steak and kidney and oyster pie, because I've never had it before. He then doled me out a very large dollop onto a white plate. I looked at it and couldn't see anything but the steak and the kidney. I looked at him, he looked at me and said, "Sir..." Wouldn't you like to know what he said to me? Have you got that far?
Yes.
He said, "Sir, would you care for the oyster?" And took it off a plate from underneath and put me a single solitary one in the middle of my steak and kidney pie.
Ian, at the end of that round, you have a commanding lead over everybody else. In fact, the only other person to score is Amy MacDonald, who has one juicy point. For her steak, not for her kidney. Who's going to begin the next round? Clement Freud, will you begin the next round? The subject after steak and kidney pie is Brussels. So can you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Amazing thing happened to me the other day. I went into a restaurant and asked for a steak, kidney, and oyster pie. They put Brussels sprouts into them. calling it a Brussels pie with the addition of pieces of pastry and the aforementioned meats and offals, which I'm not supposed to repeat. It was one of the great delicacies in Fleet Street, and in fact, continuing to the Strand, you'd have been unlikely to find anything better until you reached Marble Arch, nay, Holland Park.
Peter's challenge, right.
Well, Holland Park, Marble Arch, it's too far away from Brussels. That is the subject.
No, he was talking about Brussels sprouts. If you'd had him
something
for
to do with being
deviation
married
of
to it, I
this
think, I'm not sure.
particularly Brussels pie, and you couldn't get a finer example anywhere up the Strand or Marble Arch, I'd have given it to you, because there's no such thing, I don't think, except in the figment of his imagination. But that was not a legitimate challenge, Peter, so Clement has a point, and 23 seconds on Brussels starting now.
The capital city of Belgium, which lends its name to this delectable vegetable, Brussels, is...
Amy MacDonald is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Amy.
Oh,
You
definitely.
now have Brussels, and there are 15 seconds left starting now.
My very favourite vegetable happens to be Brussels sprouts. Whatever I eat, I always ask for Brussels sprouts with it.
Clement Freud is challenged.
repetition of sprouts.
You questions with the sprouts. The subject is Brussels.
But it's a subject.
No, Brussels is the subject, not sprouts. There's 6 seconds for you, Clement. On Brussels, starting now.
My very favorite city in Europe is Brussels, and whenever I travel, I take particular care to go to Brussels.
Clement, you're in second place at the end of that round, having gained the point for speaking when the whistle went. And Ian Carmichael, will you begin the next round? The subject is something nice. Would you talk on that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Nice is a word that is frequently used to describe something... You're putting me off, Clement Freud. When you can't think of...
Peter Jones has challenged.
He said,
Yes, he did.
Well, is only the hesitation. Is not a hesitation.
I'm afraid you did hesitate, so I give the subject to...
well, Clement Freud was bumping and boring.
Hey, to your advantage. Anybody could have challenged. He could have challenged himself, as Clement did one week. There are 49 seconds left on something nice with you, Peter Jones, starting now.
I visualize it on the shores of the Mediterranean, on a veranda, with the smell of mimosa wafting up from the sea, and all this food laid out, a wine bottle underneath the table in the shade, cooling, ready to sip, as something nice walks in a kind of diaphanous negligee with something on the...
Amy MacDonald has challenged.
Because he's going to be rude, I can tell.
I think that's prejudging the issue altogether.
But, Amy, I can assure you, those who play this game regularly are so rude. It's not true
I
sometimes.
know it's in a family programme, isn't it?
Yes, but they're
Yes.
still rude. So, do you mean you think he was being devious?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Well, I don't think he was deviating from the subject on the card, which is the correct challenge.
Well, you're the chairman, if you think it's nice, I suppose.
I can understand as a woman you wouldn't think it's nice. You might
No.
want a chap in a diaphanous what's
Yes.
floating in. Yes. So, Peter, I disagree with the challenge. You have a point for that, and there are 25 seconds on something nice, starting now.
And as I relaxed in the hammock, because I should have told you in the first place that I was lying back in this string affair, beckoning to this creature who'd just arrived and trying to reach the glass container with this precious liquid inside it so that I could place it to my lips and quaff a draught.
I've never had anybody keep going with such a sort of
Absolute rubbish.
devious turn of phrase in my life. But, Peter, you achieved it, and you gained the point for speaking when the whistle went. And, Amy, will you begin the next round of the subject, my peaches and cream complexion? That's what Ian Messiter sought out for you to talk about, and will you start now?
My peaches and cream complexion is a very difficult thing to achieve. There are many stores in London where you can go to buy little pots of cream to rub in and things, but...
Peter Jones has challenged
I don't think it's terribly difficult
to go to...
to go into a shop and buy this pot of cream. That's not a difficult
I
thing to
hadn't
do.
finished what I was going to say. I was only starting.
Oh,
But
really?
She didn't say it was difficult to go into the shops.
Oh, I thought
she
you
said
said
it was
it
very
was.
difficult to achieve a peaches and cream complexion. And
Oh,
there
I
were many
see.
stores that you could go into.
In
So I
that case, he
disagree
gets
with
an
what
extra
you-
point from me.
No, not from you.
Oh,
You've
he
given a
doesn't.
wrong challenge.
Oh,
Come
it's
on,
a wrong
admit.
challenge.
You made a mistake.
I made a mistake, yes.
Yeah.
My attention wandered for a minute. I was still back in that hammock in the south of France.
Amy, you have a point for a wrong challenge, and there are 47 seconds on my peaches and cream complexion starting now.
There are jars of sticky stuff. There are bottles of gooey things. And spongy...
Ian Carmichael has challenged.
Hesitation.
I think I would agree, Ian. So you have 40 seconds now to tell us about... this is talk on the subject of my peaches and cream complexion starting now.
Well, I think it's most interesting that this should have been given first of all to a lady, and it is quite obvious.
Amy MacDonald has
Oh,
challenged.
hesitation.
Yes, Amy, so you have the subject back. When you thought about it being
Absolutely.
given to a lady, you couldn't think why it shouldn't have been given to a lady. So you have 33 seconds, my peaches and cream complexion starting now.
The most sensible thing to do is, of course, to...
Freud has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
She would have no idea of what the most sensible is.
We'll give Clement Freud a point for a wicked and witty
no.
thing, but we leave the subject with Amy MacDonald, who has 29
Why
seconds
does
on...
he get a point?
Because he was being very wicked, and he was being rather wicked at your expense. The audience laughed, and you laughed. It's all in good fun. It's a family show.
Isn't it when I do that to him, I don't get
You
a
can be
point?
as rude as you like to
It
Clement.
just
You can
happens to
take
be
it
more
all.
fun for the Freud family than it is for us.
No, actually, I think as he's challenged me so wittingly, I think he ought to have it.
No, he didn't. You weren't
But
actually
he can't
deviating.
talk about his peaches and cream complexion. It's just ludicrous.
No, but I'd love to see him try, wouldn't you?
Well, he may try yet. You never know. We're going to see you try again, Amy. 29 seconds left, starting now.
The thing to do is, of course, to get an awful lot of sleep. An awful lot... Oh, I've done it again.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of an awful lot.
Yes, and so they've got what we wanted. Clement, for you to talk on my peaches and cream complexion, starting now.
The only way a sallow-complexioned, bearded man can achieve a peaches and cream complexion is to go out and buy peaches and cream and plaster them over his face. This is sticky, expensive, ugly, unnecessary, but expedient, because if I purchase...
Well, at the end of that round, it's an interesting situation. Peter Jones and Amy MacDonald are equal in second place, behind Clement Freud and Ian Carmichael, who are equal in first place, only 1 point ahead. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round, please? And the subject is next time. Would you talk on that for 1 minute, if you can, starting now?
Next time I play this game, I'm not going to do it with Amy MacDonald, Peter Jones, Ian Carmichael, nor will my chairman be Nicholas Parsons.
Amy MacDonald has challenged.
Oh, deviation, it's utterly impossible what he's saying.
Quite impossible to play
Yes.
without all of us, isn't it?
Of
Because we're all
course.
so good, aren't we?
Yes.
I quite agree, Amy. You have 43 seconds on next time, starting now.
Well challenged.
And you've challenged back. Oh, you intimidate.
Hesitation.
Yes, hesitate. And when you play such obvious aggressive tactics on
Thank you.
all that happens is she gets the point instead of you.
Thank
So
you.
Amy has another point for that last challenge.
Thank you.
And she has the subject now 41 seconds on next time, Amy, starting now.
The next time I play this game, I'm going to be so rude to Clement Freud because he does a lot of very strange and silly things that he gets away with. And I'm not going to allow this to happen.
Ian Carmichael, a challenger.
Deviation by miles.
Why?
really. Well, I mean, next time is the thing we're supposed to be discussing.
Yes.
Not his frailties.
She was talking about next time he does all these things, you see, and I thought making out a very good case for what she was going to
Well,
do.
I hadn't said anything for a bit, so I thought I'd better,
Yes, I'm all for you doing that.
Otherwise,
as
there'll
well.
never be a next time for me, you see.
Well, if I give the subject back to Amy, there might be a next time for
Yes,
you.
do, because I've naught to say about it. That's it.
So, Amy, you have a point for that challenge, and there are 25 seconds on next time, starting now.
I'm going to be terribly careful not to repeat myself or deviate or hesitate. I am
Clement Freud's challenge.
A repetition of or.
For such an ungallant challenge, and the boos from the audience convinced me that I should obviously give another point to Amy MacDonald for that challenge and tell her that she has the subject still with 17
mob
seconds.
rule.
Was that? Yes, it's women's lib as well, rampant. 17 seconds, Amy, next time, starting now.
I am going to talk terribly sensibly and intelligently for 1 entire minute about any subject you care to give me, Nicholas.
Peter Jones's challenge.
Well, you're not talking about next time.
Yes, she was. That was what she was established. That's what's going to happen next time. She's going to talk for 1 minute with intelligence and clarity.
I think you're partisan, Nicholas. I think you're terribly partisan.
You're absolutely
I can't
right. I
see
can't give
that.
you a point for that challenge.
I can't
Just
see
because
how
Peter
she
Jones
can...
isn't as pretty? I mean, he can't help that, can he?
Well, some people
can't
think Peter Jones is as pretty, but he just doesn't appeal to me,
Well,
that's
only
all.
Mrs. Jones, I know.
Please try and keep our personal lives out
Yes,
of this,
all right.
Nicholas.
You were the one who brought it in.
I don't see how she can possibly make a boast like that.
And
when
sustain
she-
it next time.
Yes.
Well, all right. We'll have to wait till next time to find out whether her boast comes true or not. But as she was boasting, if you like, she wasn't deviating from the subject in the card of next time. And there are 7 seconds left with you, Amy, on next time starting now.
I already feel a veteran of the game because
Well, before the letters start rolling in, if you think that I was helping Amy MacDonald, you're probably perfectly right. But I think she deserved it in view of the fact the way she's being intimidated and treated by the others. And I have to tell you, at the end of that round, she's doubled the amount of points she had, and she's got a commanding lead over all the 3 chaps. Amy, would you begin the next round, please? The subject is how to get absolute quiet. That's what Ian Messiter has sought out for you to talk about, and will you start now?
this is terribly easy, actually. If you start off by talking terribly loudly, then people will not listen to you, you see. So, you have to...
Ian Carmichael.
I know I did a thing
You
there.
did, actually. You're
I
right
know.
there. You did. Quite right.
Yes,
One of
she
those.
got absolute quiet until Ian challenged,
Yes.
and he's got a point for a correct challenge and 47
It's a
seconds.
shame, really, because I was going to do something quite interesting.
Well, we'll all wait afterwards.
I'll
to
be
see if you
gallant
like.
and let her finish if she wants.
Was it all right for radio, what you were going to do?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Don't worry, I'll guess it back in a minute.
All right. With this team, I'm not surprised. 47 seconds, Ian, on how to get absolute quiet starting now.
One of the...
Didn't get it back then. No, Peter Jones got it.
No, I
instead.
didn't expect him to goof up so early.
He gave you a chance, Amy. You weren't
know.
ready. Yes. Peter, yes.
Hesitation.
I must legitimately give it to Peter and tell him he has 46 seconds on how to get absolute quiet starting now.
I get absolute quiet immediately by explaining that there is a microphone in my teddy bear. On the other hand, one can look as though one is suddenly having an attack of some kind. Go white at the lips and staring eyes will produce an effect on any audience which is not necessarily hilarious, but it can be. But if you persist in it and really start trembling, shaking, loosening one's tie, and making a tremendous fuss, grabbing the first thing that comes to hand, you can achieve a modicum of silence because the people are naturally alarmed. They don't know what you're going to do next. They think you may go absolutely berserk.
I'm afraid that Ian Carmichael, when you grabbed Amy for the second time, Ian Carmichael challenged you. What was the challenge?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is totally devious because it is incorrect. The more he was doing it, the more noise we were getting from the audience.
I would say that's a very good challenge. And there are 4 seconds left on how to get absolute quiet starting now.
One of the sure ways of getting quiet is to drop a brick.
At the end of that round, Amy's in a very definite lead ahead of all the 3 men still. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject is What I Never Do. 60 seconds left for this subject starting now.
I never travel around in Zeppelins because I find that they're very slow moving about.
Amy MacDonald's challenge.
If he's never travelled around in them, how does he know they're slow moving about?
He's seen them. They are slow, Amy.
Are they?
In comparison with aeroplanes, they're very slow. But not in comparison with mules, of course. But anyway, that's why it's so difficult to judge, isn't it? I think what I never do, he wasn't deviating from the subject on the card. Peter, you're still with it. 49 seconds left. What I never do, starting now.
And you, Mr. Chairman, have reminded me that I never travel about by mule either. Camel occasionally I have used in the desert because they can go a long distance on a very small amount of liquid. Visiting the pyramids, they are just about the only means of transport you can use without attracting attention, because bicycles are laughed off the sand and the cars that are available are just hopeless. Helicopters. What?
Total deviation, actually.
What?
He's not telling us what he never does. He's telling us what he does.
No, I agree with you. He wasn't establishing what I never do. He got away from that. Amy, you have the subject now. There are 21 seconds left. What I never do, starting now.
I never wear hobnail boots in summer. Ever.
You have to keep going and tell us some other things that you never do, Amy. Otherwise, you'll be challenged, as you were on this occasion by Clement Freud.
Hesitation.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that, Clement. And there are 14 seconds on what I never do, starting now.
I very seldom tend the...
Peter Jones's challenge.
He's telling us what he very seldom does, and it's supposed to be what he never does.
I quite agree with the challenge, and you have 11 seconds. Never do, starting now.
I never wear hobnail boots in summer, spring, winter, or autumn.
Carmichael.
Well, there was a suspicion of a hesitation there.
No, not at all.
No, I think it was a sort of...
there was.
No
slur.
trace of hesitation.
You slithered from one word to the next without exactly hesitating. That's the way I would interpret it. So I give you the benefit of the doubt. You keep the subject. You have 6.5 seconds
I think you
left.
take payola off these regular fellas.
With you, Peter, 6.5 seconds, starting now.
I never ride a unicycle when I am appearing in public because I find... Somebody
Ian
buzzed.
Carmichael has challenged.
Stop there.
Yes, hesitation. You're quite right,
But he
Ian.
buzzed.
No, but I heard it before.
Really, yes.
Ian Carmichael has a point for a correct challenge, and he has half a second on what I... Shut up, audience, or you'll go. I might tell you, we only have a few seconds left to play this game, and at the end of the game, I'm going to turn you all out. If there is half a second left on this round, but there are a few seconds left to complete the game, and if you don't let us complete it, we won't be able to say good night.
Big deal.
Now that is how to get absolute silence, is saying to the audience, we may not have time to say good night. And they couldn't care less. Ian, you have half a second on what I never do, starting now.
I never...
Well, what I never do gave the last round a very interesting twist to the final result. Peter Jones rushed forward from 4th place to finish in 4th place. Alongside Clement Freud, which is unusual for Clement Freud. Ian Carmichael moved with tremendous speed at the end to finish in 2nd place, but none of the men managed to beat this week's winner, who was the lovely Amy MacDonald. We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
we present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones, and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we have four keen and regular players of the game who are going to try and compete against each other and speak for just a minute, if they can, on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card in front of me. And let us begin the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, what a wonderful subject Ian Mester's thought of for you to start the programme, Ecstasy. Something that you display so magnificently in the show regularly, but will you talk on it now for 60 seconds beginning now?
This is produced in people by various causes. I can say that one lady I know is always ecstatic over a cup of tea. Somebody else, of course, could get this feeling from sexual bliss or rapture, as it's sometimes called, and other people get it from sheer material things like success. I've heard it said and sung that life is sweetest when you're young, and kids 16, 21 think they're having all the fun. I disagree. I say it isn't so. I'm someone who ought to know.
Derek Nimmo has challenged
Repetition of someone.
Yes, he did say someone more than once, so being repetitious there, I agree with the challenge, Derek. You gain a point for a correct challenge, and you take over the subject of ecstasy with 25 seconds left, starting now.
Ecstasy can indeed be produced by so many different things. For instance, think of the agony of the ancient martyrs in the Forum of Rome, or even in the great Colosseum itself, being thrown to the lions and there dying for the God in which they believed. It is strange for us now to be able to imagine the feelings of these great men who gave up their lives.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of great. Said
Yes,
great
it's,
early on.
Yes, indeed, absolutely right.
Yes, it was it was such a great feeling that he was arousing, one was almost tempted to resist the temptation to challenge. But Peter, it was a correct challenge for which you gain a point and the subject, and there are 5 seconds left with you on Ecstasy now, starting now.
Ecstasy was the name of a film in which Hedy Lamarr stripped and came out of in the nude.
You were challenged on the whistle, Peter, but I think the whistle went first. So as you were speaking, when the whistle went, you gain an extra point, as you know. And at the end of that round, of course, you have the lead. And Peter Jones, we'd like you to begin this next round. The subject is my oldest profession.
What?
Oh.
You mean
I'm too vain to wear my glasses on radio. It's actually, Ian's just correcting me, my oldest possession.
Oh, dear.
There's a subtle but rather marked difference. Except if you're in the oldest profession, perhaps, but...
I wouldn't have dared to buzz that one, I tell you.
There was a rather hushed silence and a blush on Ian Messiter's cheek, because he knew he hadn't thought of that subject. Peter, would you talk on my oldest possession for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I am very proud of it, of course, and I wish I could show it you. It's something that I've prized for many years, as you can imagine. It's getting on now, as indeed I am myself. I polish it regularly every week with beeswax and a little turpentine. And it contains some of the most wonderful volumes. The Bibles, which have been handed down to me by my father.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was an yes, once he got onto the volumes, he hesitated. Derek, you challenged at exactly the same point in the last round. 25 seconds to go. You have a point in the subject, my oldest possession, starting now.
It's rather difficult, really, to tell exactly what this question means. If it means a man-made article, whether it means a geographical phenomenon, or geological, perhaps.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation is discussing the title, not his oldest possession.
Well, he was saying it's difficult to know what this means.
Well,
So
you ought to
really,
pass it on to somebody else.
Rambling on
I
like some old
maintain
twerp.
if you've got...
If
Yes, he was almost as quiet as you were in the first round, wasn't he, Kenneth?
No, I had laryngitis.
Is it better
I
now?
see.
Yes, I had this bottle of Linctus Andy.
What's happened to your laryngitis
Mind
now,
your
then?
own business.
Yes, laryngitis.
Mind your own business. I'm inquiring about my medical affairs.
I think that
Why don't you
when
run the game instead of trying to determine people's health?
I would
Get on with
run
your job. Find out what the game consists of.
I would run the game if you gave me half a chance,
Look at her over there,
Kenneth.
she's gone white.
Kenneth, if you give me half a chance, I will try and run the game. Back to the game now. If I maintain that Derek was keeping the going, which is very difficult in this game, as you know, on the subject, which is on the card, my oldest possession. So he keeps it with an extra point. 17 seconds left, starting now.
In terms of antiquity, I suppose my oldest possession is a piece of earthenware which I excavated in a place called Salamis, just outside Famagusta.
Peter Jones's challenge.
Hesitated just outside Famagusta.
Think that was nice that he did for you, Peter, because I agree with your challenge, and you have 8 seconds on my oldest possession, starting now.
And if I had the privilege of bringing this old box along for you to examine, I feel sure that you...
Well, Peter Jones was again speaking when the whistle went, so he still keeps the lead, and Derek moved up in that, got quite a lot of points in the last round, so he's in second place, 1 point behind. Sheila and Kenneth have left to score, but it's early
Yet
days.
to open me mouth.
Sheila, would you like to begin the next round? The subject, what I find most difficult. Would you talk on that, Sheila, for 60 seconds, beginning now?
What I find most difficult in life is to carry out my intentions. I'm always deciding to do something and very seldom finish it. The other day, I was reading a Chinese horoscope book, and I discovered to my horror that I am what is known as a rooster. And these aforesaid birds scrabble around and shout and carry on and never do a thing. And that, in fact, is a fair summing up of me. I am constantly sending off for books about extra...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Additional books.
No, her first was singular, her second was plural. Chinese horoscope book.
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth.
Oh, sorry. Thought I'd just jog you, Nick. I'm only helping you out for good.
I'm most grateful,
Oh,
Kenneth. I'm
all
most
right,
grateful.
then. No,
I mean, if you'd
well.
like to do the two jobs,
No,
I mean...
as long as we know where we stand, dear. Let's get this straight.
So, I mean, I don't mind, because I have signed my contract. They'll still pay me if you
I'll
want to...
sign mine too, dear.
There are 29 seconds, Sheila, for you to stay with what I find most difficult, having gained a point for a wrong challenge, starting now.
And these aforesaid leaflets.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of aforesaid.
I didn't say
She didn't
aforesaid
say
before,
aforesaid. She
did
said in the last round, I
Yes,
think.
no, aforesaid earlier on.
Did I?
No, I don't think so. Sheila, you have another point, and there are 26 seconds on what I find most difficult, starting now.
On evening classes, what I
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
Sorry, hesitation.
Hesitation,
Well,
I
she
agree.
couldn't help it. He's looking right at her.
No, she couldn't.
Most ungallant.
I know, that was Sheila's fault entirely. 18 seconds. What I find most difficult, Derek, starting now.
What I find most difficult is to understand how the good James...
Peter Jones's challenge.
Hesitation.
I'm afraid there was just a hesitation, so a bit unkind. As we all know, Derek did have a slight stutter once. There are... I was wrong when I said 18 seconds before. It was 24. There are now 20 seconds on what I
It gets
find...
longer each time, I see.
Peter, the subject is what I might find most difficult, and there are 20 seconds left, starting now.
I find it extremely difficult to speak on practically any subject without hesitating, deviating, or in some way offending the other members of the panel. I'd made the attempt week after monotonous...
Sheila Hancock has challenged incorrectly.
Yes.
You thought you were being quick and clever. He laid a trap for you,
Very
took the bait,
clever.
and he's got a point for a wrong challenge. And there are 3.5 seconds left on what I find most difficult, Peter, starting now.
month, and it's getting me down. Now,
Peter's cleverly laid trap meant that he was speaking when the whistle went. He gained that extra point, and he leads Sheila and Derek, and Kenneth is trailing, but he's going to begin the next round. And knowing your love of history, Kenneth, Ian has thought of another historical subject for you, a personality, Edmund Halley. Would you talk about him starting now?
Well, all I know really is that he had this comet, which he predicted the return of, named after him. Of course, well known as an astronomer, one time, I believe, secretary to the Royal Society. He did share an activity of mine. Curious though that may sound to you, seeing as how he was in the 18th century and me in the 20th. But
Derek Nimmo is challenged.
Deviation, he wasn't in the 18th century, it was rather earlier.
No, he wasn't. He was more in the 18th...
On the contrary, in 1701, he charted the shores of this island, you great twit.
He was Astronomer Royal in 1701, but his comet he didn't discover till 1730.
Well, that's 18th century, isn't it?
I know, I'm agreeing with you,
Thank
Kenneth.
If he was the
Don't
astronomer...
you think an apology should be
No,
forthcoming?
I don't think we have any apologies in this game. You're all so rude, we never get on with the game.
The fact that my veracity has been questioned.
No, it's not your
And my
veracity.
integrity impugned. I've been impugned.
The whole point of the game is to challenge everybody's veracity on
I would have
occasions.
thought you should have added challenge correctly, Nicholas.
No, because then you can...
Not challenge incorrectly. How many points did I get?
You got a point for an incorrect challenge. Why are you complaining? I
All right.
justified you. And you keep the subject, a point, 20, and your first point too, a round of applause. Kenneth's got his first point. You're still with Edmund Halley, and there are 29 seconds left, starting now.
And in this small boat with which he conducted the hydrographic expedition around the coasts of this island, he wrote in the margin of his notebook, "This demi-paradise, other Eden, precious stones set in a silver sea. This orb, this scepter, this..."
Derek Nimmo has
We have
challenged.
a repetition of thises. We seem to have an awful lot of them, actually.
Yes, I think if he goes as slowly as that, and he's being rather wicked by...
Well, I was hanging it out!
I think on this occasion I must accept a challenge on a small word, because they do resist the temptation, those who are sort of ardent, sort of rather intense followers of the game, who may have noticed that they resist the temptation to challenge on A's and these and thises, because we think it's a little unfair and the game would never get going. But I must accept it this time, Derek, so you have a point. 3 seconds left. Edmund Halley starting.
3 seconds? What a cheat! Waiting 3 seconds. Anyone can fill in for 3 seconds. That's a complete cheat. You've allowed him to do that to me.
Yes, I have. Because you were being very cheeky and very
I've got no points! I've got no points! I don't stand a chance of winning. He's got the last 3 minutes! I haven't got a chance! What's the point of me
You'll get laryngitis if you're not careful, Kenneth. After all, if you are asked to talk about Edmund Halley and then you make out that he wrote down some of Shakespeare's...
I might as well not come here. It's great.
We all like having you here, and you're a great help to me.
You're a great help to us all, and if we didn't give things against you, we wouldn't get such beautiful moments as the one we've just had. Derek, you have 3 seconds on Edmund Halley starting now.
On the Bayeux Tapestry is depicted the first
Kenneth
representation...
Williams has challenged
You
you.
hesitated in the middle of it.
I did not! No rubbish!
Give Kenneth a point for supreme cheek. And leave the subject with Derek, who has 1 second left, starting now.
I have 2 cheeks, and Edmund...
So Derek Nimmo finished up speaking when the whistle went, which seemed fair. And Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? And the subject is poetry readings. We've had a small one from Kenneth Williams. And would you talk on this subject now for 60 seconds, beginning now?
I've only ever taken part in one, and that was organized at the school. I did hesitate there.
Oh, but why did you stop?
Well, because I was too worried that I'd hesitated. And I felt that they might suggest that you were favoring me in some way, and the whole thing might blow up in our face.
How
In any
Very
case, I
charming.
haven't got very much to say about poetry reading.
Anyway, Sheila came in first, and Sheila, your challenge just... hesitation.
I've forgotten. Hesitation.
All right, Sheila, poetry readings is now with you, and there are 53 seconds on poetry readings starting now.
I have done one or two of these myself and attended many, and I get the most enormous pleasure out of them. There is a great upsurge, I believe, in appreciation of poetry, and not before time. Most of us have it dinned down our throat at school, rather unattractively, and suddenly when you reach old age...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
She hesitated before reaching
Yes,
old
she
age.
did.
Yes, I will. Don't worry. I'm going to hesitate as long as I can.
So, Derek, I agree with your challenge, and there are 32 seconds for poetry readings starting now.
Now, actually, far from it me be it. Now, that is a very interesting way to put it round. But in...
Deviation.
Yes, of what?
Bad grammar.
Yes, just deviation.
Yes.
Yes.
I was giving an example of modern verse.
Get off. Get off.
Far from me be it. It's the most moving line. Moving line. Thank you.
I will put Derek's
like to
point
know
the
where he
audience.
gets
If
those
you agree with
pills.
Derek's challenge of the chairmanship, would you all boo? And if you disagree, will you cheer? And all do it together now.
Hooray!
Thank you. They were cheering for the chairman. They were booing for you. And there wasn't one boo. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Are you going? No. I thought he was going.
Derek, I disagree with the what you've just said, so Sheila gets a point, and there are 26 seconds on poetry reading, Sheila, starting now.
A lot of these poetry readings now take place in pubs. There are a group called the Barrow Poets of modern people who do their own...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Kenneth, so you're now going to talk on poetry readings for 18 seconds starting now.
Poetry readings are best done by those people who know their job, and they're certainly not done in pubs. Load of rowdies all getting drunk.
Sheila Hancock has
That's
challenged.
absolutely not true.
How dare you? There's nothing in what I was saying that could possibly be challenged.
You said there are not poetry readings in pubs.
That is my opinion, and as such, it's inviolate.
Oh.
Not an opinion. And my opinion is inviolate. Nobody can challenge my opinion. Nobody.
Well, all right, you can have your opinion, but it was inaccurate, and therefore it was deviation from the subject of poetry readings. Sheila was correct, so she has a
How
point.
biased can you get? What a rotten chairman. How biased. Isn't he biased? Here, here. Aren't you crying out? There you are. Yes.
You see how strong you have to be chairman of this show. I've had Derek going off in the most violent way about me, and now I have to stick to my principles while Kenneth goes off.
You have no principles.
No,
You
no,
change your
no.
mind. What do you mean, principles?
But I'm going to stick to them all the same. And say Sheila has a point for a correct challenge, and there are 12 seconds left, Sheila. Poetry reading starting now.
Some of our very best modern poets.
Derek Nimmo has
Revolution
challenged.
modern.
Here, here.
Derek, I agree with the challenge, and there are 9 seconds on poetry readings with you starting now.
One of the most moving poetry readings that I ever went to started with the line, I know what I think's Kenneth Williams stinks. And this was with tremendous acclaim and ovation from the audience.
I'm sure the most moving poetry reading didn't begin with that line, but...
Are you questioning the veracity of my statement?
Yes!
I think it was the most moving line.
Oh, I
Well, you
can't
must
do
hate-
this programme anymore. I should be
It's very
nervous.
noisy this afternoon, isn't it? I didn't ever had such a
this
noisy
is
one. I'm
known
rather
in the-
enjoying it.
This,
So
by
nice.
the
When
way,
Clement
is,
Freud's away, we can all have a good time.
This, of course, is one of the BBC's quieter shows where passions don't get inflamed. They say that... they say that. Anyway, you want to know the score, I'm sure, because a lot of points are made on poetry readings and veracity and in violations and all kinds of things during that round. Derek has taken the lead over Peter Jones. He's 2 ahead of Peter. Peter's 1 ahead of Sheila, who is 4 ahead of Kenneth. And Sheila, would you begin the next round? My latest acquisition. Would you talk about it for 60 seconds, beginning now?
My latest acquisition is an incipient nervous breakdown after the outbursts from Kenneth and Derek on this show. I feel a dreadful trembling in my body, as well as a sense of panic and sweat on my brow, which I believe, according to the medical dictionaries, means that I'm in for a crack-up. And it is entirely due to the fact that amongst our programme we have anarchists who are about to break up the BBC's favourite panel game, which is deeply respected amongst the listeners. And I am here to bring sobriety and reason back to this panel, because I think it is a disgrace that they should be allowed to insult one another, and me, and our honoured chairman there.
Peter Jones has challenged, and I disagree with the challenge. Sheila has another point. And there are 13 seconds left, Sheila, on my latest acquisition starting now.
However, I will take a sip of water and try and pull myself together, because I do not wish to acquire one of these things, because they can be very unpleasant. But I hope that if I do, Kenneth and Derek will have the decency...
Derek Nimmo and Kenneth Williams wonder whether they should leave, but there's still a little bit more time left. Sheila started with a subject and finished with it. It hasn't happened for a long time. She gained 2 points as a result, and she's moved into second place, and she's proved that she can play the game as well and with as much feeling and passion as the chaps. Congratulations, Sheila. And who's going to begin the next? Kenneth, your turn to begin the next round. How I amuse myself. These subjects are thought up before we start the show, and yet they've all been very apt, haven't they, so far? How I amuse myself, Kenneth, for 60 seconds starting now.
Well, it certainly isn't by coming here to listen to all this dribble from Sheila Hancock. I did try to amuse myself outside her dressing room on one notable occasion by pretending...
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
Deviation!
It's true, I'm going to tell the world! I'm going to tell them! Yes, it has been all is true!
If you let him say it, it will be deviation, and the show will be taken off the air.
All right. The thing is, Sheila, I have to run that risk and leave us in the delicate hands of Kenneth Williams. Because he hasn't yet deviated from the subject on the card, so I have to disagree with your challenge and put our trust in Kenneth Williams and...
to change his story.
He gains a point, and there are 47 seconds left. Kenneth, how I amuse myself starting now.
And your trust is safe, Nicholas, because, as you know, my taste is impeccable. And any anecdote would be utterly blameless, as indeed is this account of my standing in the corridor and knocking on the door labelled Sheila Hancock. When she opened it, I feigned to be a corpse, fell in on her and went, ah! You know, that dying thing, you see. And I thought it would be rather effective. And she said, oh, get up, you great twit, or something very rude. And, of course, it didn't work at all. It was my desperate attempt, you might say, to amuse myself, but, of course, in so doing, to cause happiness for another human being.
Sheila Hancock challenged just before the whistle.
Actually, he was in a filthy temper with me, and he was trying to frighten the living daylights out of me.
Well, what a difficult decision to have to make. I would say if someone did an action like that, it could well frighten the living daylights out of you. So, Sheila, what I'm going to do is you got him very cleverly before the end. There's 1 second to go. You have the subject. And I've only just seen, as Ian Messrs awarded you that point and written it down, with 1 second to go, I've been also told that we have no more time. You begin... how I amuse myself, starting now.
How I amuse...
And that last point has made all the difference to the final score, which I now will give you. Kenneth finished in 4th place. Peter Jones was in 3rd place, only 3 points behind Derek Nimmo. And Derek was in 2nd place, 1 point behind this week's winner, with a last flourish, Sheila Hancock. We hope that you've enjoyed the programme this week. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Castles.
We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Alfred Marks in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard our announcer tell you, we're thrilled and delighted to welcome to the programme this week for the first time, Alfred Marks. Alfred has very nobly and courageously come along tonight to try and do battle with these three experienced exponents of the game who need no introduction from me, so I won't give it. Ladies and gentlemen, they're all going to try and speak as usual, if they can, for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And we'll start the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, the subject that Ian Mester's thought of is how I restrain myself. Now, as we know you very rarely do, would you try and talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now?
I suppose this could cover a multitude of sins, and among them self-control. Now, I remember a man who achieved it by chaining himself and padlocking the lot, lying on the floor, and they said, well, is that all? And he said, it's enough. And I thought it was absolutely true. I tried it myself with chains and ropes in an escapology act, which I was to have done at the old music hall in Hackney. But when I arrived there was this guitarist whose string broke, and he said, could I help him out? Well, the only thing I had was a strand of the stuff that should have been imprisoning me. But I gave it to him, and in consequence, I was found déshabillé, as the French put it. And consequently, I had to... Oh, no, I've said consequently twice.
Oh, but you shouldn't have stopped, Kenneth. You were going so magnificently. They might even have restrained themselves.
Who buzzed me?
Kenneth Freud. Clement Freud sits next to Kenneth Williams in the show, and so it was. Clement Freud, you challenged why?
Hesitation.
Yes, I would agree, Clement. And you have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 16 seconds on how I restrain myself, starting now.
First of all, I had to strain myself, and after that, I was able to restrain myself. The damage...
Alfred Marks is challenged.
A repetition of myself.
Yes, well done, Alfred. So, Alfred, you've got in there in the first round with a very...
We are playing new rules, are we?
You said myself twice, didn't you?
It is the subject on the card.
I beg your pardon, I retract that.
Of course it is the subject on the card, and you're allowed to say it twice. You've never played the game before. Clement Freud
Sounds as though you haven't either.
However did you guess, Alfie? Do you honestly don't think that if I was an efficient chairman, they would ask me back week after week, do you? Oh,
well, I get a point for cheek.
But you see, Clement Freud is one of the most generous players of the game, and I know he won't mind, as you haven't played it before, allowing me to give you a point for that challenge and allowing you to take over the subject with 10 seconds to go on how I restrain myself, starting now.
Well, that's very kind of you. I would like the subject, except I know nothing at all about restraining myself. As you can say restrain yourself or myself many times, I will carry on saying I will restrain myself.
And Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of saying.
Yes, you did say, yes.
I agree, yes.
You should go on how I restrain myself, But after about 4, if you're challenged, I would give it against you.
You would?
Yes.
I see.
But you only had 1 second to go. You almost might have achieved it, actually.
Right, yes.
Good thinking already. Have you heard the game before?
Have I heard the game before?
Yes.
Many, many times. I'm a great fan of the game.
Many. Repeated that. You don't mind me mentioning that. Anyway, I just wanted to say something so that they wouldn't give up all hope of me ever speaking at all, you know. I don't want people turning off their radios all over the country.
I know this is where there's Peter Jones, Clement.
Exactly, yes.
Clement, you very cleverly got him with 1 second to go. How I restrain myself, starting now.
No.
Those of you who know the game well know that the whistle, which is blown by Ambassador, tells us 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. Clement Freud was doing it on this occasion, and he has a commanding lead at the end of the round. And Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin the second round. The subject is the small print. Would you talk on the small print for 60 seconds, starting now?
The small print, factually, is typography set minusculely.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
It was always just hesitation all the way, wasn't it?
Kenneth, I must be fair and say I've heard you go slowly. And I think that he didn't really hesitate. He was going slowly, and he can go quicker, and I hope he will. So we will not allow that as hesitation, because it wasn't quite. 52 seconds, the small print, Clement, starting now.
One could actually go very much quicker on the small print, but I have nothing to say about it at all. So I would like to speak
Peter Jones has
much
challenged.
more
If he's
slow.
nothing to say about it, why doesn't he shut up?
I thought he did actually shut up there and sort of hesitate. So you have 47 seconds on the small print, Peter, starting now.
We've got a number of these all over the house. Some of them nicely framed, others not. Now, the one that my wife always refers to as the small print hangs in the bathroom, and it's a photograph of a little boy in Brussels over a fountain, and it seems quite appropriate. It's not an original, but it is rather nice when you're sitting there.
And there's a correct challenge from Kenneth Williams.
There's two rathers.
Yes, there was, Kenneth. You listened well, and you have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 26 seconds on the small print, starting now.
Well, this has been recently attacked in new legislation. It doesn't refer to what Peter Jones was discussing. It is, of course, the tricks by which people sign things, little knowing the dreadful hidden penalties that are being perpetrated on them by a load of filthy, unscrupulous crooks. Because most of these people, when you get these things, you buy them and they all go wrong, and no one will give you money back. And it's absolutely disgusting. I've taken back vacuum cleaners that don't work, and these Pyrex
Clement
things have all
Freud
gone
has
wrong in the
challenged
mixer.
you.
What?
With 1 second to go.
What happened?
Clement Freud challenged.
Oh! And you've got a nerve.
Yes, he has got a nerve.
What's the basis of his challenge?
I'm about to outline it.
Clement.
He repeated the word back.
Well, he was speaking so fast I couldn't hear if he repeated anything, actually. You were sitting next to him. We'll take your word for it that he did repeat it. And,
You mean you take your word for it because he's sitting next to him?
Yes.
Well, that's ridiculous.
You mustn't argue with the chairman.
I haven't got a chance sitting over here.
You're absolutely right, Peter.
I mean, it's ridiculous.
You've convinced me I should leave the subject with Kenneth Williams, who has a point for a wrong challenge, and he has 1 second to go, starting now.
And so the law has been changed, and rightly so. But there has been a little more.
Well, as Kenneth Williams was then speaking when the whistle went, much to the pleasure of everybody in our audience here, he gained a number of points in that.
Then I'm in the lead.
Second place.
Oh, who's in first?
Clement Freud.
He always wins, doesn't he?
But you are well ahead. 2 points of Alfred Marks and Peter Jones, who only have a singleton to their names. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject, current affairs. Would you talk about that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, I'm not having very many of them at the moment, but I remember foreign affairs, of course, are another thing altogether, and I'm not going to talk about them because I should be guilty of deviating. But current affairs, they are going on all the time, and when you pause and think for a moment, as you're not entitled to do in this game, of course, but if you have to talk about it...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of course.
Yes, unfortunately. It's very difficult not to say it occasionally. Clement, a correct challenge. 41 seconds on current affairs, starting now.
The current affair that my donkey is having with a strawberry roan mouse is one of the most uncomfortable and hard to conceive alliances or misalliances, as you might say, that have proliferated the countryside since June the 22nd, 1943.
Peter Jones, the challenge. Why?
This sounds like deviation of the worst, grossest kind to me.
Yes, you see, it probably, the subject matter probably is devious, but he wasn't actually deviating from the subject, which is current affairs. He established that this particular relationship with the donkey was a
donkey,
current
and I didn't hear what else it was.
Well, nor did I, I'm pleased to say. I think the less we hear about it, the better, but he wasn't deviating from the subject, so he keeps going with a point for a wrong challenge, and there are 24 seconds left starting now.
Before attempting to have current affairs, you must find out whether you're AC or DC, and whether it's 230 volts or the other one, which has round instead of square holes to go into a plug. Now, having established this beyond...
Alfred Marx's challenge.
Well, it's deviation because holes don't go into a plug goes into holes.
Well done, Alfred. Alfred, you have a correct challenge, and you have 8 seconds on the subject of current affairs, starting now.
I find...
Kenneth Williams'
Well, he was very long in starting. Hesitation, I'm afraid.
He was very long in starting, but we do give him a chance.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't apologise.
I was only just trying to speak. I haven't spoken for ages.
You've just spoken now.
Oh.
I happen to be a very deep breather.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Alfie, you have 6.5 seconds on current affairs, starting now.
I adore current affairs.
Pick him a Freud's challenge.
Deviation. He was rather quick in starting.
He may have been deviating from his norm, but he wasn't deviating from the subject on the card. He has another point and 5 seconds on current affairs, starting now.
I listen to the radio whenever I can, watch television, I adore news bulletins. I, in fact, am wide open to any sort of information.
Alfred Marx was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained that extra point. He's moved into second place now behind Clement. Freud is still in the lead, Kenneth in third place, and Peter in fourth. And Kenneth Williams, your turn to begin. Percy Bysshe Shelley. Would you talk to us about him for 60 seconds, starting now?
I don't know why I always get these blokes anyway. I mean, I don't suppose my knowledge on this subject is any better than anybody else's. I know he wrote these poems and married this woman who wrote this horror story about Frankenstein. He was chucked out of Oxford, and on the basis of the fact he wrote this thing called Defence of, or A Need for Atheism, that was all considered quite unorthodox, and they gave him the bum's rush, which is quite reasonable in the circumstances, but you can't have people in an institution which was fundamentally religious insofar as all these places.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I think I'd agree, Clement, and you have 19 seconds on Percy Bysshe Shelley, starting now.
I always remember Percy Bysshe Shelley for writing to a nightingale, and he never received a reply, which worried him enormously, because he waited by the front door morning after afternoon, evening, and then the next month he was still there by the mat, hoping that the envelope would come.
Clement Freud, your turn to begin on the subject, having the car serviced. Would you talk on that subject? 60 seconds, starting now.
Every now and again, when you get into a motor car and press the starter, having turned the key in the ignition, nothing happens. At about which time you telephone the garage and say, I believe it is time I had my car serviced. And the bill they send you, which is usually marked tuning, seems as if it were done by Benjamin Britten, because it comes to some enormous sum of money. £48.73, I seem to recall, was the last account rendered to me by the service station.
Kenneth Williams, challenge.
Well, everything seemed to judder to a halt, didn't it?
I know. He thought of that bill again, and he did come to a halt. Kenneth, you had the subject of having the car serviced, and there are 25 seconds left, starting now.
Well, you have what is known as the MOT, and various mechanics go over the vehicle, ensuring all...
Alfred Marx's challenge.
Slight deviation, because the MOT is not a service, it's an inspection.
That is perfectly correct, yes. It is an inspection which you have for roadworthiness when applying for a license. It's nothing to do with servicing the car. Bad luck, Kenneth. Alfie, you have a correct challenge and 16 seconds on having the car serviced, starting now.
It may very well be that after you have the MOT, you are ordered to have certain parts of the car serviced. Unless you do that, you will not get the necessary certificate, and you cannot put the car on the road, in which case you may have to walk or take a bicycle or have a piggyback from your friend. If you haven't got one of these people, the best way...
Alfie kept going magnificently again, gained the extra point. He's taken the lead at the end of that round. Peter Jones, your turn to begin, and the subject is buying a house. Would you talk on that one for just 1 minute, starting now?
It's very difficult to do, and I advise everybody who is contemplating it to pause and reflect for a period of years before they take the plunge. And then when they finally come to the decision, they should go to estate agents, talk it over with friends and neighbors, walk up and down the streets and roads of wherever it is they are thinking of residing, examining the buildings on either side, and occasionally even looking at newspapers and perusing the advertisements, because they have bungalows, tall ones and even shorter. And there are the semi-detached...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
You can't have a tall bungalow.
Well,
I mean, high-rise bungalows just don't...
Well, I don't know.
You can have a tall story.
Yes.
I mean, all bungalows are not the same size. You must admit that. So
Anyway,
there must be some taller than others.
When you went from bungalows,
That's
I
right.
thought you were talking about houses. You said tall ones and shorter
Yes,
ones.
exactly, yes.
But
Some
anyway,
as big as your head.
Yes.
Yes.
That's right. And there are different sizes of bungalows anyway. No, Clement, I disagree with the challenge. 22 seconds buying a house. Still with you, Peter, starting now.
So get onto the phone and speak to these representatives of vendors, of people who are domiciled in these extraordinary square boxes made of bricks with slates on the top and glass things to let the light in.
And Clement Freud is challenged again.
Repetition of things.
Yes, I think I did say things.
Yes.
Yes.
You did, unfortunately, but it was so difficult to find different words to express the same thing. Clement, you have 6.5 seconds on buying a house starting now.
It's almost essential to have money. Otherwise, nobody will sell a house.
And Peter Jones is challenged.
It's not almost essential, it is essential.
Actually, Peter, to be perfectly fair, it's not completely essential because
Certain local authorities
you
give
see,
100%
you see, you get
mortgages.
a mortgage, or a building society can help you.
Yeah, but you have to have money to get a mortgage. You can't just walk in and get a mortgage.
Peter, you've made a very good case, and you have 3 seconds on buying a house starting now.
Get a cottage in the country and retire.
Jones was then speaking when the whistle went, and so he gained the extra point, and he's moved forward, and he's still in 4th place. So that's but he's in just behind Kenneth, and Clement Freud and Alfred Marx are battling out in the lead. Alfred, your turn to begin. The subject is women. I don't know whether you know anything about them. I don't even know whether you've known any in your life, but would you try and talk about them for 60 seconds, starting now?
Some of my best friends are women. My mother was a woman. My wife is a woman. My daughter is a woman. My Aunt Fanny, who comes from Leeds, is a woman. And I know women are what they are because they dance backwards. This is the first revelation I got when I was a young man. My best affairs have been with women. I say best because not all men feel the same
Peter
way
Jones
I
is challenged.
feel.
Repetition of best.
Yes,
I think,
yes.
That's
When you thought of those best affairs, you had to
affairs,
repeat it. What a
I
pity.
think perhaps, and I wish I was dead.
I wouldn't. You've contributed a tremendous amount, and you kept going for 20 seconds. No, 18. Peter, 42 seconds on women, starting now.
Yes, well, frailty, thy name is woman. I don't really subscribe to that because I've always thought they were charming creatures and just as entitled to the same rights as we have ourselves, ordinary human beings, that is, not on a feminist level, but just as a person with a right and
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Well, it seemed to be all juddering to a halt again, didn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, I judded. I definitely judded.
Yes, so your judder was a pause, so you have 20 seconds, Kenneth Williams, on women, starting now.
The first one that flung herself in my path had hair, long, blonde tresses, which she done up in plaits. And she said to me, because she was from another country, that they were Thigh Blonden Züpchen.
Alfred Marx is challenged.
Blonde, I think, a repetition of blonde. Blonden and blonde, the same word, really, just a cheat.
No, blonden is not blonde.
Blonden is not
saying
blonde.
it in a different
blonde
language.
in a different
What
language.
a nerve you've got. He's new to the show and everything. He comes here laying down the law.
He comes in, he
No, I
takes
didn't
over.
Actually, it is the same word. It is the same word, actually.
You're inhibiting me, you are.
It's Yiddish. Blonden is Yiddish for blonde. It is
Is
the same
it?
word.
Oh, I thought it was...
2 seconds with you, Kenneth, on women, starting now.
They are often referred to as the gentle sex.
Oh, Kenneth really has moved forward. And Kenneth, it's your turn to begin, and the subject is candy floss. Can you talk about that sticky subject? 60 seconds, starting now.
Made by a lot of disgraceful people with the deliberate intention of ruining your teeth. Because this sugar stuff gets in your mouth and it rots all the gums and the roots. And, of course, you end up in the dentist. Oh, he said, what you been having? Well, I had this candy floss stuck to my teeth. Ah, we'll have to have a new set. Then
Clement Freud challenge first.
Repetition of teeth.
Yes, it was rather difficult to get away from teeth once you started on them, wasn't it, Kenneth? 42 seconds, Clement, on candy floss, starting now.
If you go to Hampstead Heath on August Bank Holiday, behind the coconut shy, to the left of the imitation rifle range, you find an elderly woman called Mrs. K.P. Potterton, selling candy floss. And this
Kenneth
deviation. The whole thing is lies. The position of this woman's all made up.
As I live quite near Hampstead Heath, I've been to the left behind the rifle store.
Have you?
And she's not there.
Oh!
No!
Good grief, it is all made up.
And I've got my family in the audience for once. She's not there, is she? I've only got one member of my family in the audience. Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, and you have 26 seconds on candy floss, starting now.
Well, of course, it's the name of a lady. She was called Candy Floss because they couldn't think of anything else to say except that she was sweet. So they gave her this name.
And Clement Freud challenge first again.
Repetition of name.
Yes, Clement, you have 14 seconds on candy floss, starting now.
It comes in many different colours: pink, green, blue, turquoise, orange, brown, burnt.
Peter Jones's challenge.
Doesn't come in brown.
It definitely doesn't come in brown. The only brown candy floss I've seen is the one that's been lying in the dust on the ground, and it didn't come in that colour. 7 seconds for you on candy floss, Peter, starting now.
There are a lot of very unpleasant sweet things that I detest, and I think candy floss is just about the worst. It has...
So, Peter gained another point. He's still in 4th place. Clement, your turn to begin. The subject is spooks. And it is the last round, I've been told, so it could be anybody's game. Spooks, Clement, 60 seconds, starting now.
Spooks is what very small bicycles have, where other similar modes of transport provide spokes, and shoes have spikes. But spooks is the subject on the card, and often go boomp in the night, as well as frightening children and making tigers, lions, leopards, and panthers exceedingly uneasy in a hot desert night, and also in a cool cage in the Zoological Gardens, Battersea, Funfair, Hyde Park, Corner, Marble Arch.
Peter Jones has challenged.
I thought he said, Battersea Funfair. Didn't he?
But he was so utterly devious.
Yes, devious he was. Yes, devious. I was
Battersea.
coming to that. Yes, I was just about to say. He said, Battersea Funfair, and he was terribly devious.
But you don't get lions and tigers at Battersea Funfair.
Yes, that's so rubbish. You can't be much more devious than that.
And you don't get them in the desert either.
What?
No, and you don't get them in the desert either.
No. Well, of course you don't. But,
No.
that's absolutely right. Of course you don't. Panthers in the desert? I've never heard this rubbish.
It so rapidly.
Yes, quite. I was onto it there. I wasn't going to let him get away with that.
No. So, Peter, you had 26 seconds on Spooks, starting now.
Well, there is a restaurant, I think, called Spooks. It's one of a...
And Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Kenneth, and you have now 22 seconds on Spooks, starting now.
Ooh. And various weird sounds are made by them, and if you stay awake long enough, manifestations, jelly-like, with curious ectoplasmic weird faces, loom up at human life.
Kenneth Williams was then speaking when the whistle went, so
I get a bonus point. A bonus point.
Yes, you got a bonus point, yes.
So I'm in the lead.
Just let me give the final
Well,
score.
what is
Lieutenant.
it?
I want to keep you
Stop
all
hanging
attentive.
it out. Come on.
The audience like to have it hung out a little because I always like when I give the final score to announce it in reverse order and say that Peter Jones did very well at the end and he finished only just in 4th place, about 3 points behind Alfred Marks, who coming for the very first time very nearly won. But by 1 point, he failed to beat our joint winners of this week, Clement Freud with Kenneth Williams. do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Barry Took in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard the announcer say, we welcome a newcomer to our program this week. We're very pleased to have Barry Took, who's come along nobly and courageously to pit his wits and his talent against these three intrepid exponents of the game. And let us start with one of the most experienced of them all, Derek Nimmo. Derek, would you begin the show this week? Oh, I better remind them all, of course, the rules are just the same. They must try and speak for just a minute if they can, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card, which is in front of me. Derek, the subject is making notes. I see you're making a rapid note called Making Notes. 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, of course, one can make notes on all sorts of things. Principally, one tends to make them on pieces of paper, as I've just done now, as Mr. Parsons, I believe his name is, so rightly observed. At other times, when I'm appearing in plays, I've made them on my cuff. It helps you to remember your lines. Frightfully good. I remember in the Aldwych farce, Mr. Robinson...
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Repetition of remember.
Yes.
And hello.
Hello.
Hello. No, you were saying hello to the audience.
Yes, and
oh, well, that
people
was
speak
very
in
nice.
general.
It's so surprising for such courtesy so suddenly from you, Clement. The subject, you gain a point, actually, Clement, for a correct challenge, and you take over the subject with 44 seconds left, making notes, starting now.
The sad thing is that if you don't make notes, you tend to forget what you have come to do, which would be a mistake at all times, and particularly on this program. I don't make notes very often in my journalistic life because I find that when I write things down, the very action of imprinting...
Peter Jones, a challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, he was getting slower and slower as he searched for words that he used in his journalistic career. Peter, I agree with your challenge, and so you have a point and you have the subject. 26 seconds left for making notes, starting now.
Of course, under certain circumstances, it can be a criminal offence if they look like pound notes and you distribute them to retailers. You can get into very serious trouble. Of course, there's a metal...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of course.
Yes.
No, it was the first time I said it.
No,
Well,
you
no,
began
I know that
with...
you're sitting in the...
I didn't begin by saying, of course I didn't.
Of course you did, actually.
Did I?
So I'm afraid Clement Freud has a point for a correct challenge, and he has 10 seconds on making notes, starting now.
One of the best things to use is paper, because you do look an awful idiot writing on your skin or on other people's shirts. Also, laundries tend to charge extra.
That is blown so elegantly and discreetly for us by Ian Messiter tells us that 60 seconds is up, and as you probably know by now, whoever is speaking at that particular moment gains an extra point. Clement Freud was doing it on this occasion, and he has a commanding lead at the end of the round. And Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin the second round. What it like? Oh, I'm sorry. What it's like. Such a ridiculous subject, I couldn't believe it. Clement Freud, 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, in the beginning, I only read about it. And then, at the age of 16 or possibly 17, I felt that slight tingling in my toes, that hot flush on my cheeks, and my hair began to fall slightly over my eyebrows before It went completely...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of before?
Yes.
Before I read about it.
Yes. Derek, you have a point for a correct challenge.
You've missed a lot of good stuff.
Well...
I would particularly like to hear about your hair falling over your eyes, I must say.
The trouble is, most of it fell right past his eyes. I feel we heard such good stuff, actually, from Clement. I'm delighted to hear from Derek Nimmo on the subject of what it's like starting now.
Well, I think it's terribly nice. Some people tend to say it tickles a bit, and it's quite the nicest fur coat that I've ever bought for myself. On hot days like tonight, one might find...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation. Before he said tonight.
Peter Jones was correct, and he has a point, and he has what it's like, Peter, and there are 24.5 seconds left starting now.
Well, it is, in my view, rather like a tram ride, and...
Barry Took has challenged.
I just wanted to say good evening, as I hadn't spoken. He also did something rather suspect before the tram ride.
He was putting his hand up to impersonate the tram.
I do.
Well,
no, I think Barry, obviously from the reaction of the audience, deserved a bonus point for a brilliant remark. And, if you can get a laugh out of good evening, you must be a very good scriptwriter. Barry, well done. The subject is still, I'm afraid, with Peter Jones, who has 19 seconds on what it's like starting now.
Well, 19 seconds is barely long enough for me.
Clement Freud has challenged.
I didn't challenge.
You did. Your light came on. You pressed your buzzer.
Isn't that lucky? No,
Isn't that lucky for Peter Jones? Yes.
I have an alibi.
As you stopped his flow, it means that he must receive a point for an incorrect challenge.
At least a point.
At least. And 16 seconds left on what it's like, Peter, starting now.
Even 16 seconds is hardly long enough.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of hardly long enough.
Yes, I would say.
That was the previous time I said that.
I know, but you've said it in this round, so, that is repetition. Or we're allowed to repeat. There's somebody leaving the show already from the audience. She doesn't know what it's like anyway. Or perhaps she's going to find out. Anyway, the subject is now back with Derek Nimmo. All you're allowed to repeat is the subject on the card, by the way. And there are 13 seconds on what it's like, Derek, starting now.
It must be very unpleasant to be in this audience tonight when the chairman's making such rude remarks about you. No doubt the woman has gone out to find what it's like outside, and perhaps she'll be enjoying quite tremendously by now. She'll be lying in the Green Park out in the sunlit...
Well, Derek Nimmo was speaking when the whistle went, gained the extra point, and a very interesting situation at the end of that round, because Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Peter Jones, the three regular players of the game, are all equal in the lead with 3 points, and Barry Took has got 1 point for saying good evening.
I have a feeling it's going to be downhill from now on.
Barry, your chance to move uphill now, because we have a subject for you, my preference. So can you talk for 60 seconds on my preference, starting now?
My preference is for sitting on hot days like this in the company of such wonderful people as I find around me. I think they're all absolutely splendid, particularly Clement Freud with his wonderful beard.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of wonderful. It was very nice, but...
Yeah. Well, as he hasn't played the game,
no,
I think we'll be lenient on
Let him
this
say
guy.
good evening and get another point.
No, I'm going to give him a point for the repetition of wonderful. I thought it was rather clever the way he
nicely done.
I mean, it's a great effort to say something that's wonderful twice about you, so I thought... we'll give him a point for that. 47 seconds on my preference, Barry, starting now. But Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, either hesitation or perhaps you'd like to give him another point.
I'm going to give him another point.
Give him another point.
There are 46 seconds for my preference, Barry, starting now.
I've never met such a sporting crowd in the whole of my life. I must say that my preference is to sit in this beautifully warm chair.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of sit.
Yes, you have sat here before, actually. Derek has got a point for that challenge, and he has 38 seconds on my preference starting now.
Well, my preference is for having ladies sitting next to me on this programme. Up till tonight, I've always had a beautiful damsel sitting here on my right-hand side. Now, what do we get now? Oh, grotty Barry Took. Well, what I hadn't anticipated when I came tonight. I was told it was going to be the lovely Andre Merry. I'm filled with excitement all day. It's that lovely snub nose.
And Clement Freud is challenged twice.
Why?
Two lovelies.
There were two lovelies. Yeah.
Well, she's very lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, so ungallant. He really is.
I'm not sure there weren't three, actually. But anyway, Clement, you have a point for a correct challenge and 20 seconds on my preference, starting now.
My preference is actually for Barry Took, who has the sort of figure which I've always...
Barry Took is challenged.
Deviation.
I think the audience applause indicates quite clearly that Barry has gained a well-deserved point for the correct challenge. And 16 seconds, Barry, on my preference, starting now. Clement Freud is challenged.
Good evening.
Clement Freud has a point for good evening, and Barry Took has a point for an incorrect challenge, and he has 15 seconds on my preference, Barry, starting now.
Can I get... Oh, I'm sorry.
Derek Nimmo is challenged.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, and Barry Took still has the subject. Is my preference, Barry, starting now.
Plagiarism is not a very pretty word.
Clement was challenged. Why?
He's quite right. It wasn't a very pretty word. It was hesitation to boot.
There was no booting in it at all. There was no hesitation. Barry Took has the subject. There are 12 seconds left. My preference starting now.
My preference is to be among decent, fine people of the sort not...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of people.
Yes.
Talked about wonderful people, beautiful people, and people again, you know.
Look, Peter, I just like people, right?
I think you made your point, Peter. You have a point, and there are 6 seconds on my preference starting now.
My preference is for very under...
Barry Took has challenged.
Hesitation.
Rubbish. Rubbish.
No, you are...
The moment I buzzed, you stopped.
All I can say is some people learn the rules of Just a Minute very fast, don't they? Peter, you have a point for an incorrect challenge, and you have 5 seconds on my preference starting now.
And for public transport rather than motor cars and bicycles or even walking, because...
Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went, gained the extra point, and a very interesting situation. Derek Nimmo and Clement Freud are equal in third place. Peter Jones is 1 point ahead in second place, and our leader is our newcomer, Barry Took. Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject, the nub of the matter. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
The nub of the matter. What a delightful phrase, describing as it does the rock-bottom nitty-gritty. And I think it's high time that we, all of us, banded together and employed a team of experts to examine this very thoroughly, internally and externally, sniffing round it, digging deep.
Derek Nimmo has challenged twice.
Repetition of ternally. Internally and externally.
But as internally and externally are words.
So I didn't.
And not even hyphenated. It's an incorrect challenge. It's a good try. Peter gets a point for a wrong challenge. 39 seconds on the nub of the matter, Peter, starting now.
And if they can possibly come up with a solution which would solve this problem which has plagued us all.
Derek Nimmo has
Repetition
challenged.
of problem.
Yes, there was a problem before, Peter. So Derek had a correct challenge that time. And 32 seconds, Derek, on the nub of the matter, starting now.
Nub of the matter as far as playing this game seems to be to keep on saying good evening to the chairman, and then you will be liberally awarded with all sorts of points. It's quite a new departure. We've never actually done it like that before, and I'm very fond of finding new ways, methods.
Peter, Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of new.
Yes.
Oh, he's right.
It's a tough one, but it's correct. 19 seconds on the nub of the matter starting now.
The nub of the matter starting now is that unless we get rules for this game, it's going to be terribly difficult to decide whether Barry Took is actually the overall winner or Derek Nimmo, chewing a pencil, will come into close second place, because the nub of the matter is...
Derek Nimmo challenged just before the whistle.
Just after his nub.
Yes, there was a hesitation
What a
with
shame.
only
What a shame.
half a second to go.
Such a sporting player, Clay, too, isn't he?
So you've done a Clement Freud on him and got in with, I say, just half a second to go. The nub of the matter, Derek starting.
The nub of the matter is going to win.
Nimmo gained the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and that extra point has taken him into the lead 1 point ahead of Barry and Peter, and Clement Freud trailing 1 point behind them. And Clement Freud, it's your turn to begin. The subject, my friend Smith.
Who?
My friend Smith. Would you talk on that, Clement? 60 seconds starting now.
One of the great things about having a friend Smith is that nobody knows who he is or which actual Smith he might turn out to be. My first friendly Smith was a school boy, aged 14 at the time, I seem to recall, who came up and kicked me on the shins on Hampstead Heath because he was a Boy Scout, and it said, "Do unto others what you would have them do to you," part of the law of Lord Baden-Powell, as he was later to be, and carrying his staff.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Yes,
I'm very glad. Yes,
yes,
I
you
really
were getting a bit sort of
I
bogged
was
down with
getting
your
very
Boy
bogged
Scouts.
down.
Yes, and my friend Smith is now with you, Derek, with 27 seconds left, starting now.
By a very curious chance, my friend Smith was a senior sixer in the Wolf Cubs, founded by that splendid gentleman, the hero of the South African War, which Mr. Clement Freud just mentioned. Now, I met my friend...
Clement Freud is challenged.
I mentioned Lord Baden-Powell.
Yes.
When he was the hero of the Boer War, he had no title.
But he later became Lord Baden-Powell. He was referring to the same man. To my mind, he'd made it quite clear that he was referring to the same individual.
Oh, really? I thought that was very open to doubt, myself.
That's why you challenged.
Strike you.
Well, I think he was a hero during the time of the Boer War, but whether he was a hero on this occasion in Hampstead Heath when he was kicking you, I don't know.
Derek, do you want to say something?
I'd like to put in a word for Buller.
Yes, I'm glad you joined us, Barry. You do relieve things so delightfully on occasions. 14 seconds are left, Derek, with you on my friend Smith, starting now.
Of course, Lady Smith was terribly relieved when my friend Smith married her because he'd left her lurking around in this wood in Hampstead. He was in the Owls, they had a very nice totem pole, and sometimes when we used to go to camp...
Clement challenge just before the whistle.
Deviation.
Why?
The Owls are Boy Scouts, and he was a sixer. And that isn't
Absolutely
a wolf cub
Very
thing.
well played, Freud.
Well played, very
well
clever.
played.
Half a
The
second
browns
ago,
and
he
blacks
got in.
and greens in the wolf
Yes.
cub. Very good, Freud. Very knowledgeable, do you see? He's filled with totally
Tremendous
useless
sporting.
information, Freud.
I have been told by Ian Messiter, who keeps the score, because he'd actually put part of his whistle into action when he... there's a fifth of a second left for Clement Freud to talk on my friend Smith, starting now.
Good evening.
So it's a very even race in the game. Clement Freud has come forward into third place, 1 ahead of Barry, 1 behind Peter, and 3 behind our leader, who is Derek Nimmo. And Barry, will you take the next round, please? The subject, before and after. Can you talk on before and after? 60 seconds, starting now.
Before and after is a subject before and after my own heart. Before and after are 3 of my...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
I agree with your challenge.
Oh, thanks so much.
And
It
you
was
have
a
a point.
tough one, I know. But, I'm glad you're allowing it.
Peter, you have a point, and you have 47 seconds on before and after, starting now.
Before and after is often the subject of advertisements, and one sees pictures of people who've used a certain type of hairdressing, and one notices that not only their hair, but their...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Addition of hair.
Yes, indeed, there was.
Hairdressing, you
Is that
see.
hairdressing?
But hairdressing.
No.
And then hair.
No, hairdressing is
It's
an
a
art...
hyphenated word, isn't it?
No. A hairdresser...
A hairdresser
indulges
is
in
one word, but
hairdressing.
hairdressing is hyphenated, I would have thought.
I'm
Would
not
you-
an
what did the
authority on
audience
hair.
say?
I hardly have any.
I will have to put it to the audience then. Do you agree with Derek's challenge? And if you agree, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? They decided that it's... you didn't repeat yourself. So Peter keeps the subject, and there are 35 seconds on before and after, starting now.
And on the evidence of these 2 photographs, it rather looks as though, having used this stuff on your skull, your entire entire appearance is altered, including the clothes you're
Freud
wearing.
is challenged.
What?
He's challenged you, and I know why. Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Yes, I agree.
What?
He's challenged you for deviation.
He meant scalp. not
Yes, you meant scalp. You
Yes.
get in your skull. Your skull's underneath your scalp. We
No, you have to rub it well in. It says on the bottle, it says.
Yeah, even if you rub it well in, I don't think it would have any effect on the skull. It might affect the scalp, even well rubbed in or not. Clement, I agree with your challenge, and you have 27 seconds on before and after starting now.
I didn't do it before until I was nearly 15, but afterwards I had a lot of experience, especially when my toes started to tingle, and this incredible sensation of euphoria, utter and complete elation overtook me, which I think is possibly why my voice has this cadence.
Peter Jones has challenged.
I don't think elation is the same as euphoria, and you can't experience both at the same time.
It's a very nice thought, Peter, but I would have thought either you can or
You can't. Yes, very good thinking. Very good. Yes, very quick, our chap.
Well reasoned.
I think you've grasped the situation.
Yes.
I would
think
say
you got
that
down to the
if
nub
you
of
are-
that,
Hang on for a decision. It's
I would say that if you were in a state of euphoria, you would probably be highly elated as well. There are 7 seconds, Clement Freud, having gained another point with you before and after starting now.
Before and after the dinner party, I was hungry and thirsty and belched and yawned appallingly with my host.
Clement Freud, then speaking when the whistle went, gained the extra point and has moved forward now to take the lead alongside Derek Nimmo. And Peter Jones is trailing by 1 point, and Barry took just behind them. And Peter, will you begin the next round? The Peter. What I do with old razor blades. 60 seconds starting now.
What I do with old razor blades? Well, fortunately, this is a problem that I don't have very frequently, because I own an electric razor, and each blade lasts about a year. So every 5, I collect them in an envelope and address them to myself, but I don't put a stamp on. Drop them into the letterbox, and the next morning they are delivered to my front door. I refuse to pay the excess postage. And what the GPO does with them, I don't know or care.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Yes, what a rotten one. I was enjoying that story.
Well, it was over, actually. There wasn't much to say after that.
Derek, you have the subject, you gained a point, and there are 23 seconds on what I do with old razor blades starting now.
What I do with old razor blades is to collect them in a matchbox, and I find them most tremendously handy in my tool cupboard. I take them out, for instance, if I get some paint on the window, perhaps this has happened to you, I don't know, maybe, and I scrape down with my old razor blade, it removes the paint. Frightfully useful.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of paper.
Yes. Clement.
Repetition of what?
Paper.
You mentioned
Never mentioned paper.
Oh, paint, then. Repetition of paint, whatever it was.
I got the point, and it was... let's
said
have
paint,
none of
didn't
this.
you?
He said repetition of paper. I haven't mentioned paper, have I, ladies and gentlemen?
Well, would you speak up in future
Well,
so
they
the
can hear.
chairman and the other contestants...
It's not my fault that the chairman's deaf, is it?
Well, I'm
I
sitting
think-
near to him and I can vouch for the fact that he didn't say paper.
Thank you
Good.
very much.
Not at all.
Thank you.
No, not at all. That Clement Freud was also being particularly keen because this is the last round and it is neck and neck at this particular moment.
I wanted
And
Nimmo to win.
that's an easy way out. There are 9 seconds left for Derek to continue on what I do with old razor blades starting now.
What Barry took was my old razor blade, which I was going to give to my friend Smith, and he was going to use it to split...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
He's talking about his friend Smith, which was the other subject earlier on.
No,
so
but
it
he
can't
did
be
make
right.
it quite clear he was going to do something with his friend Smith's old razor blade. He
No,
brought it in
he's talking
somehow.
about his old friend Smith.
I know he was, and he was going to give him an old razor blade or something, so I don't think he was deviating, so he has 4 seconds to continue with what I do with old razor blades starting now.
What I do with my old razor blades is to sharpen them up and sell them on the streets of London to enormous profit.
Well, Derek Nimmo gained a number of points in that round, and as I said, there's no more time. You probably guessed who was the winner, but let me give you the final result. It's very equal. Barry Took, who joined us for the first time, did jolly well. He was actually in 4th place, but he was only a little way behind Peter Jones in 3rd place, and he was only 1 point behind Clement Freud in 2nd place, but he was quite a way behind this week's winner, Derek Nimmo. Well, we do hope you've all enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we are delighted to welcome back to fill the 4th chair, the itinerant chair, the ladies' chair, our guest's chair, Sheila Hancock. Once again, she's come back with that star quality that she has to show her brilliance, her wit, her intelligence against our 3 regular and keen and unruly players of the game. And as always, they're going to try and speak if they can for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject if they can. And we begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, the subject is an appreciative audience. I'm sure we have one here tonight. And would you talk about that subject? 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, looking round at all these absolutely delightful faces, I'm sure you're totally right. My goodness, they're all ready showing their appreciation in quite the most charming way. But in fact, one of the most appreciated audiences I've met recently was when I was in Alice Springs, and I went there to a rodeo, and I had to ride what is called a brumby, which is a totally untrained horse. And I mounted onto this great snarling beast, which had never had a bridle put round it before. Then they opened a gate, and out...
Clement Freud has challenged you.
Deviation.
Why?
You don't put bridles round horses.
You're being too precise and pedantic. I disagree with your challenge.
I thought that's what the game was all about.
It is, but if you get too pedantic, we don't have much of a game, do we? So I will disallow that challenge and let Derek have a point for a wrong challenge and keep the subject, and there are 30 seconds left, starting now.
Well, when it was released, into the ring I came, and the idea is you have to stay on it for 10 seconds. Now, that doesn't sound very long, does it? But I can assure you, as its back legs were tied together with a piece of chain, and the idea was to buck and shove me up into the air, I suddenly flew off and lost about 2, perhaps 2 and...
Sheila Hancock, Janet.
Repetition of 2 and hesitation.
Yes, because he was trying to find another word to replace seconds, as we all knew. Sheila, that was a correct challenge, and you have a point for that, and 10 seconds left on an appreciative audience starting now.
An appreciative audience is one of the greatest rewards in our business. And sometimes when one has a bad audience, I often feel...
Clement Freud has challenged.
She repeated audience.
I know she did.
But it was one of the words, one of the many words on the card.
One of the 3 words on the card, yes.
I'm very sorry.
Sorry you can't. Sorry you can't count above 2. And, but as you pressed your buzzer and stopped Sheila, she has to get a point for a wrong challenge and continue with the subject, which obviously you were trying to get in with your usual cleverness, with only 2 seconds to go. But Sheila has it now, starting now.
I want to say to them, do better, like...
Sheila Hancock was speaking then when the whistle went. Clement Freud, will you begin the next round, please? The subject is how to stop smoking. You have 60 seconds in which to do it, starting now.
There is a saying which is, no smoke without a fire.
Peter Jones is challenged.
Hesitation. He said, There is a saying.
I don't think he ummed enough to call it a real hesitation, so I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to Clement and say he has a point for a wrong challenge, and there are 57 seconds left, starting now. And Derek Nimmo has challenged.
It seemed to be long enough for a hesitation.
Yes. There wasn't even an on that occasion. Derek, you have another point, and the subject, and there are 55 seconds on how to stop smoking, starting now.
Well, the best way to stop smoking is to say, every now and again, and then you find you won't be able to get the cigarette into your mouth. I once tried this on Tuesday in Sheffield in the month of March, and the most extraordinary thing happened. As I put the noxious weed into my mouth and said...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of mouth.
Yes, you used your mouth more than once. So Clement has another point for a correct challenge, and there are 40 seconds left. How to stop smoking, Clement, starting now.
There are on the market all sorts of patent medicines which set out to stop you from smoking, and one of these is made of aniseed and nail varnish, which you spread on your teeth, and is said to be totally effective, although your ears do buzz as a result. Another one, obtainable at most good chemist shops and one or two gentlemen's outfitters, haberdashers, and hat makers, is a toe.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Hesitation.
I'll put it to the audience. I don't think he really hesitated. Do you think so? If you agree with you... All right, they've said no. Clement, you have another point. You obviously have the audience with you, and there are 14 seconds left on how to stop smoking, starting now.
The North Lowestoft cure, of which so many people are now availing themselves.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of cure.
Yes, you have a point for that, Derek, and there are...
It was hyphenated.
8 seconds on how to stop smoking, Derek, starting now.
Well, the best way to stop smoking is take a quick puff.
Peter Jones, will you begin the next round? The subject, cubism. There are 60 seconds, and you start now.
Pablo Picasso, Georges Braque, and Oxo are the names that spring to mind immediately. Of course, these two great artists had nothing to do with meat extract, but they did split up the pictures so that one got an idea of the way that the things were made, blocks in 3 dimensions, so that you saw someone's ear.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
There's a painting. It can't be in 3 dimensions. It can only be in 2, so deviation.
But you can give the effect of 3 dimensions by the way that you concoct or compose a picture. So I disagree with the challenge. Peter keeps the subject, and there are 37 seconds left, starting now.
Yes, that's why it was called Cubism, and Paul Cézanne followed on these two great masters.
Derek Nimmo's challenge again.
Great painters, great masters.
Yes. A tough one, but we have to give it to you. 30 seconds, Derek, on Cubism, starting now.
A perfect example, I suppose, of Cubism is the sort of dress that Sheila Hancock is happening to wear this evening, which is composed of all sorts of very square...
Clement Freud.
Repetition of thoughts.
Yes, you have the subject for a correct challenge, which is Cubism, and there are 21 seconds left, starting now.
The art of manipulating the cue in billiards or snooker has been falsely described.
Derek Nimmo.
Deviation is omitting a B.
Q. Biz. Yes, but he's using the cue in a... We didn't get a chance to develop his particular point.
With a cube of chalk, that's what you meant, isn't it?
I said it was falsely described.
Clement Freud has 15 seconds left on Cubism, starting now.
As Cubism, because this term actually means paintings or sculptures which are 3-dimensional, as was so handsomely pointed out by several panelists who spoke before. Pablo Picasso's blue period, which followed almost...
No, Sheila got in before the whistle. Sheila, what's your challenge?
Well, if he's talking about Picasso's blue period, he's not talking about Cubism.
I quite agree, Sheila. You have 1 second. You have 1 second left on...
I didn't have a chance to if I was going to buzz.
Sheila, no, 1 second with you, Sheila, starting now.
Rock.
Clement challenge before the whistle. What's your challenge?
Hesitation.
Shut up. Sheila Hancock has another point and half a second on Cubism, starting now.
Picasso.
Suddenly realise I haven't given you the score yet. But the situation is that Sheila has taken the lead at the end of that round. She's 2 points ahead of Clement Freud, she's 2 points ahead of Derek Nimmo, and he's 3 points ahead of Peter Jones. And Sheila, it is your turn to begin. The subject, my holiday. Would you talk on that? 60 seconds, starting now.
I seldom take holidays because for most actors it means that you're out of work. But last year I was pretty tired, so I decided to go skiing. And I went to a shop and bought myself lots of trendy things and got in a plane, which is a terrifying experience for me, arrived in Austria, where there wasn't a centimetre of snow. So I waded around water in my nasty waterproof trousers and jacket.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of water.
Yes, the waterproof might be hyphenated, but I think we
It's
must...
one word.
Not even
waterproof.
hyphenated,
It's not
one
even
word.
hyphenated.
Isn't it? I don't know. Is it hyphenated?
Waterproof jacket.
I mean, it's one single word.
Yes.
It's the wrong challenge. She's got to...
How did they pick you?
What?
How did they pick you?
You use the right word, pick. They toss a coin and see who's free. 34 seconds,
I wonder
Sheila.
who won.
They couldn't afford the others, you see, Peter. That is the problem. 34 seconds on my holiday, Sheila, starting now.
I got awfully bored of mountains and fir trees and longed to come back and see the variety of the English countryside, which I invariably do when I'm abroad. Also, I wait for fish and chips when I land and lovely cups of tea not made out of tea bags.
Clement Freud.
Repetition of T.
Yes. Clement Freud, you have a point for that, and there are 16 seconds left on my holiday, starting now.
I was very generously awarded a 3-week holiday after working for 2 years in a very menial task some years ago. My employer came up and said, as from next week, you will take unpaid leave. And I said, you're very decent indeed. Thank you so much.
Clement Freud, speaking then when the whistle went, gained that extra point, and he has now gone into the lead alongside Sheila Hancock, with Derek following, and then Peter Jones in that order. Derek Nimmo, we're back with you. Will you begin the next round? The subject is, what's in my pocket? 60 seconds. Don't take it all out now. Starting now.
Well, I think the best way is to have a little peep, actually. I'll see what's in my pocket. I've got assorted £1 notes, all bearing legends that say, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £1 for the government...
And Sheila Hancock challenge.
Repetition of £1.
Yes, if you read things, you'll
Yes,
quite like it.
that's good.
Sheila, you've gone back into the lead with that point, and you have 46 seconds on what's in my pocket, starting now.
Nothing. A void. I haven't got a pocket, so therefore there is a blank full of...
Hesitation.
Yes, you have 40 seconds on what's in my pocket, Derek, starting now.
I also have an application for an international driving permit, which is required in the following countries: Afghanistan, Algeria, Angola, the Arab Republic of Egypt, Argentina, Australia, Bahrain, Bhutan, Bolivia, Botswana, Brazil, Brunei, Burma, Burundi, Cambodia, Cameroon, Canada, Cape Verde Islands, the Cayman Islands, the Central African
Clement
Republic...
Freud challenge first. There were too many islands.
Thank you.
As you can see, it's sometimes the one with the quickest ear who then presses with the quickest reaction who gets in. In this case, Clement Freud, and the islands did Derek in. 18 seconds, I'm sorry. What's in my pocket, Clement, starting now?
I have in my right pocket a handkerchief, comb, piece of paper, bus ticket.
No, he
and
hasn't.
Screwdriver. Whereas my left one contains...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
It's not a plural subject. It's what's in my pockets, not what are in my pockets.
Oh, that doesn't matter. Look, it's this pocket, the left pocket and the right pocket. What's in my pocket? My
His
left
pocket's
pocket, my
absolutely
right pocket.
empty. I've had my hand in it.
All right, so, no, Derek, an incorrect challenge. Clement has another point, and there are 5 seconds left. What's in my pocket, Clement, starting now?
While women have extraordinary things in their handbags, men, on the whole, keep their pockets...
Clement again was speaking when the whistle went and has taken the lead at the end of that round, just ahead of Sheila Hancock. Clement Freud, beginning of the next round, please. The subject, what the Romans do. 60 seconds starting now.
From what I read in the more lurid newspapers, they race up to lady tourists and pinch their behinds, after which no legal action whatsoever appears to be taken, enabling them to repeat this process to other ladies, usually...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, I suppose you say plural and singular, but ladies, I can say repetition.
Yes, you're pinching ladies behind and other ladies, you're quite correct. Derek, and there are...
Anyway, he repeated the process, didn't he? Because he said that they repeated the process.
Yes, but you didn't challenge, Peter. 45 seconds with you, Derek, on what the Romans do starting now.
When in Rome,
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Peter! Peter, the subject is what the Romans do, and you have 43 seconds starting now.
Well, some of them I know. I read about this the other day. They scrape out the bottom of the Trevi fountain and collect the coins that have been thrown there by the tourists hoping to return to the Eternal City. And there are two gangs of them competing for the money that is...
Clement Freud has challenged.
In the repetition of
Yeah. Repetition of the gesture that he made as he tried to find another word to say scraping out.
Yes.
There are 25 seconds, Clement, with you on what the Romans do starting now.
They elect prime ministers with bewildering frequency.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. I would agree, Derek, and you have 20
I would agree
seconds.
as well.
Very good, yes, I agree.
Sheila?
Well, I agree, yes.
Right,
definitely.
unanimous.
I buzzed, actually. I buzzed, but I'm too slow.
Yes. So 20 seconds on what the Romans do, Derek, starting now.
Some of the things that the Romans do are really quite extraordinary. I was wandering along the Via Veneto one Friday night, and I saw, to my total amazement, a great big white horse mounted by a naked woman coming towards me. I said, "Take me back to dear old London town."
Well, Derek got some points at the end of that round, but he's only stayed in third place, I'm afraid. But he's only 1 point now behind Sheila Hancock, who's 3 behind our leader, Clement Freud, and Peter Jones is trailing a little behind them all, but it is his turn to begin, and the subject, Peter, independence. A good, apt one for you, and will you talk on it 60 seconds starting now?
Well, it could be quite good if I'd happened to learn the Declaration of Independence.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, he always says that is a hesitation, so I was just...
Yes, it was a hesitation,
Yes,
but
you
as you're
put
all
pen
about
in
equal up there, we're going to give Peter a chance, and he's only been going for 4 seconds, and it wasn't fair, and it was a bit mean.
And you
and
gave Clement an
and we gave Clement an and we're going to give Peter an and we're going to say he's got 55 seconds on independence, Peter, starting the Clement Freud challenge.
You said he'd only been speaking for 4 seconds, and now you make it 55.
Yes, well, I said 5
Where has the other second gone?
You've just taken it up. He'd actually been speaking for 5 seconds, so I will correct myself. I'm sorry that you wish me to be so pedantic. You've already complained about the
I
chairman's
don't mind.
pomposity.
I doubt very much whether I can keep going for 54, let alone 55. So I don't mind in the least.
Well, there are 55 seconds on independence, Peter, starting now.
My wife being an American, we have a facsimile of the Declaration of Independence hanging up on the staircase, and a most moving document it is. And it's signed by all these people with great names like John Hancock and Sam Adams and Tom Adams and Franklin.
And Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of Adams.
Yes, they should have had so many Adams signing that document.
No, well, I mean...
Clement has another point, and independence is now with you with 43 seconds left, starting now.
It is a very strange thing in education these days that whenever a child does anything which is totally irresponsible and reprehensible, teachers tend to say he is manifesting his independence. You find dreadful marks on the floor, stains on the sheets, windows broken, and panes of glass.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well,
What?
Hesitation.
Well, I don't know, I thought it was a bit boring and dreary. All these sort sort of...
You thought it was about time we heard from you, so you challenged and then
well,
you thought...
you know, what I was really thinking about, stains on the sheets, and they can't be in every school having stains on the sheets, can they?
Why not? I've seen children go to bed with all kinds of filthy things and make their sheets look disgusting.
Please try and keep your personal life out of this. It's just a game, you know, Nicholas.
Clement Freud, I disagree with Derek's challenge, which was really a non-challenge, so you have a point. And there are 21 seconds left on independence, starting now.
Ayres Neal, who was the headmaster and founder of one of the great independent schools, was once asked whether he'd had any success.
Derek Nimmo.
Schools.
Yes, you mentioned schools before. 14 seconds, Derek. Independence starting now.
I do think it's terribly nice to have one's independence and be able to walk across the moors under a warm blue...
Sheila Hancock's challenge.
You don't have to have your independence in order to walk across the moor.
You don't have to. It's terribly nice.
No, but it's nice to have it.
I don't understand at all.
What's the matter, Peter?
I didn't understand the point of view at all about walking across the moors and all that.
I'm not sure that I understood it either.
It was the same way about this woman who mounted the white horse and came relentlessly at him.
Yes, he's trying to use up a lot of very old duff material, isn't he?
And I would say he's being successful. Sheila, I disagree with your challenge. Derek has another point, and there are 8 seconds on independence, Derek, starting now.
When Mr. Peter Jones secured his independence from the rag trade, he went off and started collecting hyphenated words.
That utterly devious thought of Derek Nimmo's. He got a point for speaking when the whistle went. He's now overtaken Sheila Hancock, and he's only 3 points behind our leader, who is still Clement Freud. Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The subject, reading teacups. Will you talk on that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Actually, the art of reading teacups tends to be passed down from one gypsy to the next. And I know a lady called Mrs. Smith who is most extraordinarily adept at reading teacups. She learnt the trade.
Sheila Hancock, challenge.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree, Sheila. 45 seconds on reading teacups, starting now.
My grandma was very good at this. The sequence that you have to take is to drink your tea and then swish the slops around and pour them into your saucer. And what remains is what you interpret. And you can sometimes see cats, in which case you make up some complicated story about how you're going to meet one of these. Or things with wings have something to do with success.
Clement Freud.
A slip.
Well,
give her a point. Yes, I mean,
cannot have so many Freudian
I mean,
slips
I
in
mean,
one
I mean,
program.
give her a point.
Poor old
I'm
Freud,
sorry,
he's
yes.
trigger happy, you know.
You see, she gets a point
Yes, of
because
course,
you
yes.
stop her flow, and she has to gather her mental strength and continue.
Well, I said I was sorry.
I know.
It's all right, it gives me time to think of something else.
I know. All right, you've got a point as well, Sheila. And there are 26 seconds on reading teacups, starting now.
Sometimes nursery china.
Derek Nimmo has
Repetition
done.
of sometimes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Clement. Derek Nimmo, you have 20 seconds on reading teacups, starting now.
Reading teacups, particularly if it's Worcester, is rather an interesting craft. What you do is you...
Peter Jones has challenged.
He said it was an art when he started speaking about it, and now he says it's a craft.
Yes. You can't be both, can it?
No.
No.
No, I mean, this is a different kind of reading teacups, if I may.
No, it's a different kind of cup, but not a different kind of reading.
He's going to talk about
And
reading
if you're
the
going to
mark.
establish
Talking about the marks, oh love, the marks on the bottom.
Oh, dear boy, thank you. This is the last round, and it's a very tense situation, and as Peter Jones can't make have any effect on the final result, Peter, I'm going to give the challenge to you, and you have 10 seconds on reading teacups, starting now.
You look very hard at the shape.
Clement Freud is challenged.
As he can't make any result to the final, I thought I'd give him another point.
It may not make an effect on the result, but it might have an effect on Peter Jones. But, Peter, you have another point, and there are 9 seconds on reading teacups, starting now.
Look very carefully to see what it looks like, and if it's the shape of New Zealand, you suggest to the person who's cut it
Sheila Hancock
you're
is
going on a very long journey. And
Sheila is
similarly...
challenged.
No, I was going to challenge on repetition of look.
It was wrong.
You look
Sheila.
very carefully and
So you keep it up and Peter will probably finish up the winner. He has another point. And there are 3 seconds on reading teacups, Peter, starting now.
Alternatively, if it's a picture of something in the northern hemisphere.
Well, Peter Jones was speaking then when the whistle went, and he gained the extra point. In fact, he did extremely well in that round, and he came up to save his honour and his reputation, though he finished in 4th place.
Too late to save my honour.
Well, then you saved your reputation. But though he was in 4th place, he was only 3 points behind Sheila Hancock in 3rd place, who was 2 behind Derek Nimmo in 2nd place. But they never, any of them, managed to overtake our leader, who had been throughout the contest this week, Clement Freud. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Jean Marsh in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. Well, as you've just heard in the announcement this week, we are delighted to welcome distinguished actress Jean Marsh. And very nobly come along here to fill the 4th seat and do battle with these 3 regular and intrepid and disgraceful exponents of the game. Just a reminder, I'm going to try and ask them to speak if they can for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card in front of me. And we're going to begin with Kenneth, and the subject, Kenneth, is exhortations. Would you go on that one for 60 seconds, starting now?
Not to be confused with exaltation. Exhortation generally is a method, verbal or written, of persuasion to another or many people to lead a better life. You could say, "Oh, come, all ye faithful."
Derek Nimmo has challenged you.
Deviation doesn't necessarily mean to exhort people to lead a better life. It could be to exhort people to lead...
I didn't say, I said often, no, not always.
Derek, he is still an exhortation, whether it be to a better life or a worse life. So
That's
I disagree with the challenge, and Kenneth gets a point for a wrong challenge. He keeps the subject, and there are 3 seconds left, starting now.
I'm sure Derek would not disagree that St. Paul to the Corinthians was exhorting them. And in the same way, you could say that the words of Arthur from the barge, "Let thy voice rise like a fountain for me night and day, for what are men better than sheep or goats, and others shall blind life within the brain. If knowing God they lift not hands of prayer both for themselves and those who call them friend, for thus the whole wide world, bound by gold chains about the feet of God." What finer exhortation could you find than that? I challenge you to mention anything more uplifting, more spiritual...
Derek has challenged you again, because you would... Yes, why?
Well, he's just challenged me, so I was going to accept the challenge.
Well, Derek's accepted your challenge, but I disagree with the challenge because you weren't hesitating or deviating. You might have been deviating because we couldn't hear what you were talking about half the time. But Kenneth, you have another point, and 5 seconds on exhortation starting now.
Adeste fidele laete triumphant. Or...
Kenneth, you were speaking when the whistle went, and as everybody knows, whoever is doing that on that precise moment gets an extra point. Kenneth, at the end of that round, you're the only one to have got any points at all.
Oh, good!
So you have leapt into a commanding lead with the others yet to score. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject, how to live a long time. Would you talk to us for 60 seconds on that, starting now?
Richard Algernon Frederick Howe, in 1827, was walking towards Scarborough rather in the same way that St. Paul was on his way to Damascus, and he had a similar blinding flash, rather perhaps in a way to be akin to the letter that St. Paul, which I've already mentioned before, but nobody's buzzed me so I can go on, wrote. And he wrote, nobody's buzzing me at all, are they? Never mind.
Peter Jones has buzzed you. What is your challenge?
That he was hesitating.
Yes,
he was
indeed.
laughing.
Right,
so he
Peter, I
must
agree
have
with your
hesitated
challenge. You have a
to
point,
laugh.
and there are 36 seconds on how to live a long time starting now.
I think the best way is to live each day as it comes in a relaxed and happy manner, not taking part in the rat race at all, but allowing these rodents to go past one on their way to some kind of bourne from which no traveller returns.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
He was obviously coming to a dreadful halt, wasn't he?
But he hadn't yet reached the dreadful halt, so he hadn't actually hesitated, so he gets a point and keeps the subject. And there are 14 seconds left, Peter, starting now.
And I think yoghurt eaten at crack of dawn is an awfully good thing, or brown sugar, molasses. They're very good for making it more palatable. And the...
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
I'm sorry, it was Jean's challenge.
Well, making what more palatable?
The yoghurt.
So what is your challenge, Jean?
Oh, well, I'd forgotten about the yogurt. It was such a long time ago.
It wasn't very long.
It was actually only 7 seconds ago.
It seemed like a minute.
It doesn't. I mean, 7 seconds is no time when you're trying to describe how to live for a long time.
But Derek, Peter, I disagree with the challenge, so you have 2 seconds left on the subject starting now.
Keep breathing.
Well, all the points scored in that round went to Peter Jones, and he's taken the lead over Kenneth. And, Peter, will you begin the next round? It's your turn. The subject, bath. Would you talk to us about that? You can take it, obviously, any way you wish. 60 seconds starting now.
What a glorious city. Pearl of the West Country, patronized by the Romans, immortalized by Richard Brinsley Sheridan in that great comedy, The Rivals. I myself have actually appeared at the Theatre Royal in that...
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Deviation is a plug about him. It's nothing to do with Deviation.
I thought it was a plug for Bath.
Yeah.
Of course he didn't.
I think the audience applause.
Of course, that applauding is vanity. It's a disgrace.
Whether it's vanity or not, he didn't deviate from the subject of Bath. So, Peter, you have another point, and you have 45 seconds on Bath, starting now.
And on that happy occasion many years ago, I stayed with Mrs. Goff of Nelson Villas, one of the finest theatrical landladies it's been my privilege to stay with. Unfortunately, she's passed on. However, much of this great city remains.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of city.
Yes, he also said stay twice, which you missed. Derek, you have a correct challenge, and you have the subject of Bath, with the point, of course, for a correct challenge, and there are 27 seconds left, starting now.
That wonderful man of Bath, Beau Nash. How like Kenneth Williams, a little plumper one might think, but there a great arbiter of fashion, of taste, an exquisite, a dandy, a fop, man of his time, like the aforesaid mentioned colleague over the other side of the counter sitting there now. What a man of amusement who ruled!
Kenneth Williams has
I'm
challenge.
afraid you did say what a man twice.
Yes, what a man.
I mean, it's quite justified. You're absolutely right to look at me and say, what a man. I mean, I understand your motives.
Yes.
My breast swells with pride. It really does.
But your finer instincts to get a point for yourself overruled those.
Yes,
and,
that's
so
right.
you challenged, and you have a correct challenge, and there are 8 seconds on Bath, starting now.
It's best to get into it with a sponge under the posterior. Then you don't feel the cold of the porcelain.
Jean has challenged you, Jean Marsh.
Well, you wouldn't feel any cold because you have a hot bath and the water would have heated the bath. So it was
Exactly.
deviation.
Exactly, Jean, yes. And I cannot
You turn
believe
ugly
that
now.
Kenneth
You
ever
turn
gets
ugly
into
now,
a cold
you
bath. So, Jean, the cold of the porcelain has got you a point, and you have 2 seconds on the subject of Bath, starting now.
I rarely, if ever, have one.
So Jean Marsh managed to do the trick that so many of them try to do, get in just before the whistle, which means she was speaking when the whistle went, gained the extra point. She has now 2 points. She's in 3rd place behind Kenneth. Peter's still in the lead. And Jean, will you begin the next round? The subject is, what's in a sausage? Can you talk to us about that for 60 seconds, beginning now?
Well, what's in a sausage varies. I mean, what goes into mine doesn't necessarily go into yours, or what's on sale in the high street. I've got a sausage at home that I made yesterday because I'm a well-known cook. But the last sausage I ate out in public was in a foreign restaurant. I thought it was so delicious that I congratulated the owner of the cafe, not the sausage. And I said to him, "Isn't it good? It's got much more personality than your average British banger." And he said, "Yes, it would do. It's got more horse in it." It was the more that made me... You look sad too, Kenneth. It made me very sad at the thought of all these sausages all over the world having some in. Now, mine at home has no... Pony.
Derek Nimmo has challenged you.
Revelation of hope.
Derek, you have 18 seconds on what's in a sausage starting now.
Frederick Watt was a missionary who went out to Botswana in 1820, and unfortunately, the head of this particular tribe was a very keen sausage maker.
And Jean has challenged you.
There's no such thing as a sausage meter.
Have you never met a sausage? Then you're a sausage meter.
Yes, you don't meet sausages, you meet people.
You were actually referring to the hesitation that he did just before he said that, weren't you?
Yes, it was.
Thank goodness you said yes. You've got a point, and you have 10 seconds on what's in a sausage starting now.
I'm sure everybody would like to know what's in mine. You take the neck of a goose, you turn it inside out, you tie up one end with strong white cotton, and then make the stuffing, which is ground veal...
Jean Marsh was then speaking when the whistle went, and you will be delighted and surprised to hear that she has leapt into the lead alongside Peter Jones at the end of that round.
Where am I?
You're going to speak next.
Well, how many points have I got?
You got 4 points. You got them all a great big bang like that, and you're still there.
And then you leapt into the rear.
Oh, thanks.
But we've got a subject that Ian specially thought of for you. He knows that you'll enjoy talking about Paul Cézanne. So would you talk about him for 60 seconds, starting now?
His painting I know very little about, but his relationships I have some knowledge of. There was a deep friendship formed with Zola, and when he practically lampooned him or sent him up, depending on which definition you prefer, as Lantier, the relationship became strained, to say the least, and he transferred his affections to this Camille Pizarro. Well, when the Franco-Prussian War broke out, they both thought, hello, best to get out of it, and they came out of it and went, oh, I said out of it.
Oh, you often get away with it if you keep going. Yes, Derek challenged you.
Oh, well, repetition.
Get out of it. Yes, Derek, you have the subject of Paul Cézanne, and you have 22 seconds starting now.
See, I think probably The Bridge on the River Marne was his most influential painting in many ways. Of course, the interesting thing, as Mr. Williams has already told us, is that Pizarro is his great friend, charm, and guiding light. And yet, not for one moment did Cézanne become a pointillist. Now, this you might think surprising, but I suppose if you look at the palette that he was using, there's burnt umbers and ochres and...
Derek Nimmo was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point, and he's moved forward alongside Kenneth Williams into 3rd place. And Peter, will you begin the next round? The subject, delightfully British, prunes and custard. Would you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, that doesn't have to be a dreary canteen dish. It can be quite exciting if you immerse the prunes in British wine, apricot or peach for 2 or 3 weeks so that they get the flavour of it.
Kenneth Williams has challenged. I think so, yes. And you have 43 seconds starting now.
I was offered it once in a hospital. I said, no thanks, I don't want to be up half the night. And they said, you've got to, there's no alternative. I said, get out of it. I said, don't you talk to me about alternatives. I said, you're supposed to be running...
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Repetition of alternatives.
Yes, there were too many alternatives in your prunes and custard. 18 seconds on prunes and custard with you, Derek, starting now.
I think of all the kinds of English fodder that one is occasionally presented with. Prunes and custard.
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Deviation, prunes and custard can never be construed as fodder.
Well, in one sense, anything you eat can be described as fodder.
Fodder
It
is
may
for
be a
cattle.
vulgar or a slang way of
No,
doing
it's
it.
defined in the dictionary as food for cattle.
Who tried running a restaurant and putting up outside fodder offered?
I think it would be a very good idea. I think you get a lot of people going in.
Kenny, you told me the other day you had your oats and you didn't mean you'd been in the corner.
I think in slang expression, you could say fodder could be described as food. 9 seconds on prunes and custard, Derek, starting now.
Plums have to be let go fairly rotten and dried up before you get the basic.
Jean Marsh's challenge.
Certainly not rotten. Deviation.
Quite right, she's absolutely right. Give her a point.
So, Jean has a point and 8 seconds on prunes and custard, starting now.
If prunes and custard are made well, they go down extremely deliciously, especially after a homemade sausage. And if anybody wants to know how to make it...
Jean Marsh, will you begin the next round? The subject, enough. Will you talk on that rather... Oh, yes. It's a very difficult one, isn't it? Enough, starting now.
I can't. I've never had enough. When I was a little girl, my mother used to say to me, the trouble with you is you don't know when you've had enough, but I hadn't had it, so how could I tell? And this feast that everyone talks about, that enough is as good as, it's never come my way, and it may have come yours. Enough. I mean, it's like sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. I don't know what that means. I wish somebody would buzz me so I could learn what it means.
And Peter Jones has buzzed you. I didn't hear it, but the light came on.
Well,
Peter.
she said she wanted someone to buzz her, and naturally I obliged.
So think of a challenge.
Yes. Repetition.
Of what?
Mother.
You said come 3 times.
Did she? Oh, well, come.
Well, she did repeat herself, so we give it to you, Peter. 35 seconds on enough, starting now.
Well, some people I know cannot get enough, and I've had enough of them, because it really is terribly boring. I feel that one should try and make do with what one has, if one can't.
Kenneth Williams, this challenge.
3 ones.
3.
One should make do if one can't, and one should, and one...
Yes, I
three
think he ought to have it, because he's losing anyway.
Exactly.
He's not losing by much, but we don't use it as an
No, well, I don't often have the opportunity to be generous.
And you challenged on one, we'll give it to you, Kenneth. And you have 22 seconds on enough, starting now.
This always occurs when you have reached the point where the stomach is, so to speak, satiated. You could say, if it were liquid you were imbibing, saturated, you see, as opposed to suppurated or suppuration, not to be confused with cyanide.
Jean Marsh's challenge, why?
Well, it's all very informative and instructive, but hardly anything to do with the game. I mean, it's nothing to do with enough.
What is your challenge, my love?
It's deviation.
Yeah, he wasn't deviating from enough. Yes, I know. 1 second left, starting now.
You could never get enough of me.
Kenneth, you got the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and you have, at the end of that round, leapt into the lead.
Good.
Well, usually when I say that, they applaud. Obviously, you haven't got your usual fan club with you this week, Kenneth, because you know the ones who support you and shout for you.
Very nice
and you'll never guess what the next subject is on the card.
What is it then, Nicholas?
It's for you to start, and it is leaping into the lead.
Leaping into the lead?
Yes. Will you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
This has happened to me on this game, not frequently, but on 1 or 2 quite delicious occasions. I am not extremely fluent. It is not one of my great talents to be able to speak ad lib.
Jean Marsh is challenged.
Deviations. He is extremely fluent, and it is one of his talents to be able to speak ad lib.
Well, that's one of those impossible decisions, because he didn't deviate from the subject on the card. Kenneth, 43 seconds on leaping into the lead, starting now.
And, of course, it happened to this incredible man, Zatopek. And, in fact, I said to him after, how did you manage it on that last lap? And he said, out of breath though I was, and the spirit low, I still had that, what you might call, reservoir of inner energy, giving me the
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation and 2 these in the end.
Yes, he didn't know what Zatopek got. 23 seconds for you on leaping into the lead, Derek, starting now.
I remember going for the 100-yard wolf cub egg and spoon race, and it was terribly difficult to leap into the lead because if you think about it, that little object that was balanced on the tiny utensil might easily fall off if you did a bit of leaping into the lead. So I was rather naughty. I cheated a bit. I'm sorry to confess this. I put a bit of chewing gum on said the aforementioned.
Jean Marsh has challenged us before the whistle again.
Oh, well, there was a bit of hesitation between said and aforementioned.
Oh,
Because
I
he
don't
was
think
going
I've
to say
heard
spoon.
it. It was a very good try. This is the thing that Clement Freud tries always when he's with us. But,
Oh, does he?
Yes, he always does and usually succeeds. So I'm sorry I can't agree with you because Derry gets a point for a wrong challenge on 2 seconds on leaping into the lead, starting now.
I shall leap into the lead if I win this next point, because then
You have indeed leapt into the lead alongside Kenneth Williams, who's also in the lead with you, and Peter and Jean are only just behind you in second place together. Derek, would you begin the next round? What I see through the hole in my fence. Would you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, actually, they shot this particular fence last week, keeping passing counterfeit diamonds, and when I looked through the hole in my fence, I saw a deal of blood and all sorts of nastiness and goo on the pavement. I really felt quite revolted by it. And I phoned for the ambulance, who came along and put him on a little stretcher and popped him on the back seat and took him away to St. Mary Abbott's Hospital. And there, a most distinguished...
Jean Marsh has challenged you.
You saw an awful lot through this hole, didn't you?
So what is your challenge, Jean?
Well, it's devious. It's lying, anyway. I mean, how could he see all that through a hole in his...
Oh,
It's
I agree
just
with
gone
you.
all the
I
way
don't
from
think he
his
could have seen
face.
right inside the fact that the chap was put inside the ambulance
And
like
Mary
that.
Abbott's Hospital and everything.
So Jean Marsh has a point, and she has 36 seconds on what I see through the hole in my fence, starting now.
What I see through the hole in my fence is Mr. Williams, obviously not as interesting as this criminal that Derek Nimmo was talking about, but this man in this next door.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Jean, you don't want to start as quick as that. You can't keep up the momentum, man. 29 seconds, Peter, on what I see through the hole in my fence, starting now.
I see the most delightful neighbours having tea on the lawn, which they mow every day, and the trees.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. If there's tears on the lawn and they're mowing it, everything's going to be smashed. Having tea on the lawn, which they mow every day.
Kenneth, it's still perfectly possible to have tea on the lawn and mow it, but not at the same time.
That's ludicrous.
It may be ludicrous, but we've got to believe, because he wasn't deviating.
I haven't spoken for ages.
Well, you've just been speaking now to great effect.
No, I mean on a subject.
There are 20 seconds, Peter. I disagree with the challenge on tea on your lawn. What I see through the hole in my fence, starting now.
Then, later on, as the sun sinks in the west...
Derek, Kenneth Williams
He's going deliberately slowly to try and get a point. But it's so slow, it's obvious to me that it's hesitation.
Here, here.
Here, here.
You know, it reminded me of somebody else who does it exactly the same. And so, as I don't allow your challenge, because I don't think he was going slow, and the audience don't, they're just enjoying your antics, Peter gets another point. And there are 16 seconds left. What I see through the hole in my fence, Peter, starting now.
They put the lawnmower...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Playing keenly now, repetition of they.
Oh, I think that's wicked.
Well, it's true.
It's true,
It may
all right.
be wicked, but it's
If
true.
you're going to play as tough as that, I have to be fair. 14 seconds on what I see through the hole in my fence, Derek, starting now.
What I see through the hole in my fence is a great, big, voluptuous, blonde, nubile woman. And there...
Peter Jones has challenged.
He can't see this woman through this fence that he was talking about earlier. No. He said he was in hospital.
That's a very good challenge, because you did say the hole in my fence.
Yes, but you discredited that one. You took it away from me last time because of that. You said that fence was impossible to see through, so I've now found another fence. I mean, you can't keep on looking through the same fence like that.
You didn't establish that it was another fence. You said the hole in my fence. You never said it was another fence. I got to be tough with you on this one, Derek, because you were tough on with Peter. Peter's got a point, and there are 3 seconds on what I see through the hole in my fence starting now.
Drinks are brought out, the radio is playing.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of R.
All right, Derek, it's a correct challenge, so you have 1 point left, 1 second left on what I see through the hole in my fence starting now.
What I see through the hole in my fence.
Actually, Peter's playing as keen as he was. During that half second, you did challenge, Peter. What was the base of your challenge?
Oh, I didn't challenge. I put the thing down altogether.
All right, so the last 15 seconds became very keen, as you saw, and the end of that round, which is also the end of the game, because we have no more time to play this, just a minute. Jean Marsh, coming for the first time against these 3 tough men, finished up in 4th place, but did jolly well for the first time, I think. Congratulations, Jean. You only 2 points behind Kenneth in 3rd place, who was 2 points behind Peter in 2nd place, who was 3 points behind this week's winner, who was, once again, Derek Nimmo. I do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute from all of us here. Goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messeder and produced by John Castles.